Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting of March 29th. This evening, our principal focus is going to be on budget as well as some of the accompanying warrant articles. We'll have one session after an initial discussion of a variety of topics, some administrative, with the Finance Committee with a focus on the budget. But we're also, again, as I say, talking about the warrant. And one of the first items will be hearing the HRA, Hatfield Redevelopment Authority, talk about two of their proposed articles for town meeting. Before we begin, however, is anyone here for public forum? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay.
I'm Carrie Flaherty from the Hatfield Board of Health, and we're here tonight just to give a general introduction of our new health agent that we hired about 3 months ago. This was the first time that we could all get together with the board, and so this is Charlie Knickie. He's got 15 years of town, local Board of Health involvement, and then also he just retired last June in 2015 from the Department of Public Health after 16 years of service with them. So he has lots of knowledge and has jumped right in with certain topics that we've had on the table that needed some finishing up with, and some new things that have come along for us, and he's been an excellent addition to the board. Prior to that, we had Bree Eichstead, who was our first health agent that we hired once that was all in effect, and she did a wonderful job for her first year being here, but she had gotten hired full-time in Greenfield, and it was just too much for her to do Hatfield and Greenfield, so that's why she chose to leave the position. And then we posted, and Charlie applied, and he says it's been a great retirement filler, so hopefully that stays the way it is. He's brought a lot of knowledge to us as board members. Most of us, or all of us, are new within the last year, so it's been a great addition for us to have the guidance from the Department of Public Health, because he's got all the knowledge in the background to help us with stuff when we have issues that come along. Charlie?
This is like deja vu. You know how many times I've been in Hatfield over the years? I'm looking at files and my name is in these files. Like, you know, my hope is to take and help give the Board of Health some professionalism working on projects and to streamline things so we don't add costs to the community. One of the bases that I work with is not only do I understand the environmental side of public health, but I also understand the law side of it. I'm very comfortable working in court by myself and putting things together that way if necessary. I've done it for years. I retired as a state district health officer, which meant that I was overseeing over 100 communities in western Massachusetts, providing them with guidance and direction. And I used to partner up with the Attorney General's office when it was something that was extremely messy, politely said. And my background has been everything from housing to food, all the way to the point of inspecting state prisons, which I'm very thankful that you have none here. But this brings me back to my roots, because I first started in Southampton on the Board of Health when the town was about 2,000 to 3,000 people. And my career marched its way through East Hampton, up to eastern Franklin County, all the way to the state level. So please feel free if you have questions, concerns. All you got to do is bounce me an email or give me a call.
Charlie, your reputation precedes you, and we're very
I've been
pleased.
trying to take care of that.
We're very grateful to have you.
Yes,
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time tonight. For us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, thank you.
Take care.
Welcome aboard, Charlie.
I think we're all going to enjoy this as we move it forward, really. Oh, sure, yeah, now
Just wanted to be sure.
I'm all set, thank you.
Do it'll work. Is anyone else here for public forum? Okay. Larry, your group, HRA? Why don't you have your HRA sit over here, please?
There's 7 of us.
Pardon?
There's 7 of us. So we could. We can sit there.
Whatever you like.
Oh, Carrie left her glasses, I think.
Yeah. Yes, this is a posted special meeting of the.
Charlie,
Hatfield-
would it be easier if you,
Oh, you
Wanna
want us to
face
sit
the
over
camera?
there?
no, I mean, would it be easier to use that kind of mic so you can sit
Oh,
down?
Mike. Okay, yeah, we can do that. I thought this was.
Well, that way the camera
they-
can
They're,
face you.
they're
as
coming
well.
in a little while.
That's later.
So you'll be gone.
So,
This is
our
Larry
joint-
Grossman, the chair of the Hatfield Redevelopment Authority, and they're in tonight to discuss two of the articles that they're proposing for the warrant and town meeting.
Thanks, Jeff. This is this posted meeting of our committee also, and we're here to discuss Article, what became number 9 and 10 for the meeting, the annual town meeting next month, or May. And we've also brought our attorney down to McNichol, and there's also some people in the audience that may add to this discussion that I could introduce if there's some opportunity for that. Without going into the whole history of this, because I know time is limited, we presented these articles to you for inclusion on the warrant, and we come now tonight to discuss your reaction to them and to ask your support, and also that they would have to be placed before the Finance Committee since the first one involves expenditure of money. I know that they usually recommend or don't recommend or have no opinion on articles. So I'm not sure of how you develop that on the warrant, but certainly we would like both you and Finance Committee support on 9 and 10, where 9, I believe it might be required. I don't remember how that goes. So we're here to answer any questions or to any concerns you might have about 9 or 10. And then also, I notice on topic 5 to discuss the demolition, maybe anything you want to discuss on that now. Of course, Article 10, and well, this pair of articles would precede any need to demolish a building, so, and save the town over $300,000. So, I don't know, we'd like to really ask your reaction to this, and can we count on your support at town meeting for these articles? And if not, we'd like to know what alternative or what you'd like to present with this building that the town people through the bylaw and through the Historic Commission have declared historic and put a moratorium on, and even at the end of the moratorium, the building is still historic. So,
Perhaps Larry, you want to give an overview on Article 9, so people at home will know what
oh
we're
yeah,
talking
well,
about.
Article 9, just for those of you who haven't seen this language, part of it is procedural, that the building has to be declared surplus, which it had been once before. And then this article will carve out a small piece of land of the lot across the street, only 33,000 square feet, which includes the building and the parking area that's presently behind it. It does not at all involve the playing fields, which will be preserved. In fact, there's another article on the warrant that further defines that preservedness. And that in conjunction with the building and the small piece of land, we would like to see a proposal made through the RFP process that the building be converted into over 55 housing, which was actually in line with the previous Pioneer Valley Planning Commission study on the building. It was the recommended use. That we preserve the historical facade on the north, south, and west sides. And the money aspect of it is that we would do the abatement, the environmental abatement, that it would be required and has been actually approved at the previous town meeting for asbestos and other issues, which would have to be done again if it was to be knocked down or to be developed. So basically, we would be turning over this building for development into a over 55, 8 to 10, 8 to 11, some kind of small number of units, which, with the goal to put this building back online on Main Street, have people living in it, across from Town Hall, across from the Senior Center, the store, restaurant, churches, and the anticipated revenue, again, based on the Pioneer Valley study, is between $40,000 and $50,000 a year to the town. And that really doesn't, I don't think that number included any other fees, like water sewer fees, that would also benefit the town. So that in a nutshell is the project on Article 9. The twin article that goes with that, Article 10, rescinds the previous articles at town meeting and special that related to the demolition of the building a year ago. And also frees the money, the $300,000 that was approved, and there was also a $92,000 allocation from free cash that would revert back to the town as a result of Article 10. So are there any questions or concerns?
One of your staff.
Yeah, if I could just, I just wanted to point out, and my name's Donna McNichol, and the HRA hired me just to develop these warrant articles in hopes that the selectmen would consider putting them on the warrant this year. The way we organized this was that we believed that if we put Article 9 first and it didn't pass, then 10 could just be passed over, so that in fact those other votes and the demolition could proceed. But what we were really hoping is that there'd be one more shot at saving the center school. The HRA's heard from numerous people that they would love to be able to get rid of their big, older, beautiful homes in Hatfield, but remain in Hatfield. I think we know that all through Western Mass, there's a lot of us that are getting to that age where we're not quite sure we want to be maintaining big old colonials, but really don't want to leave our communities. And yet, there's not a lot of this kind of housing in Western Mass, particularly in town centers, that fit all the community development requirements for elderly housing, being across from town hall, being near libraries, restaurants, being near the schools so that you can actively take part with the kids in the grammar schools and have a really multifaceted life and not have to leave your community, but not stay in that big old house that you raised your kids in, but is really too much for you now. We do have a developer with us that's at least looked at the project, that believes it is financially feasible and that it would really work. He's done projects like that in the past. I don't know whether you've all seen the paper, but a similar developer is taking over one of the old paper mills in Turner's Falls, a small part of it. And while they may be demolishing the rest of the paper mill, he's going to turn that into this similar kind of housing. These kind of projects hopefully will become more and more in Western Mass to give us all places to live as we get older, and so that we can walk to facilities and enjoy the center of town life. The $300,000 is a large number, I know, but we took what we believe covered the asbestos and lead paint abatement that would have to be done in the building anyway prior to demolition. And that's really, that figure represents that, plus any incidental costs to doing an RFP and selling the property. We believe it's more than would necessarily be needed, but felt that that was a much smarter way to go than putting in a very limited amount and having to go back to town meeting if the RFP works. The RFP process could be done fairly rapidly. If it doesn't work, so be it. Then the building could still ultimately, of course, be demolished. But it's a beautiful building right in the center of town, and giving it one more chance to be preserved for something that I think the town seriously needs as far as housing goes is what we're asking you to see how the voters feel about it. 2/3 vote, as you know, because it'd be a borrowing article, is significant. And if it doesn't get the support of the town and can't garner 2/3 vote, then so be it. but putting it on the warrant, giving the voters one last chance to decide whether they want that building demolished or not. We're hoping that that can happen, and then it can proceed accordingly.
I didn't understand exactly what your interest was today, but I do have several questions. One, our town council earlier shared his view that HRA had no legal authority in the matter of center school. In fact, town meeting had not approved HRA's engagement in this. So just kind of set the stage, he also asked if there was any contrary, he had received any contrary legal opinions. So just to kind of clean up the background here is, has anything changed?
No, I don't think HRA has any interest in that building, except for there being a redevelopment authority and having an interest in it being redeveloped. But as far as any legal claim, that building's clearly under the custody and control of the select board. And we very purposely left it there because the HRA really doesn't have the resources to do an RFP and get that. So no, that hasn't,
Okay.
they haven't gotten any contrary advice regarding that. I mean, Attorney Brackett's advice, I think, is still legitimate.
Well, he's requested any contrary opinions too.
Yeah, no.
One other thing, I see you have an attorney, given you have no budget, interested in how you're able to fund your attorney, or is this pro bono?
It is at this time.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we've been down this road multiple times over a decade. We've gone to town meeting twice on sale, denied. We went once to lease it, went out, we had one respondent, and it cost too much to fix up, and they walked away. And we went once to town meeting to ask for the funds to fix it up and use it, and that was denied. So as we've had this discussion once before, the Board of Selectmen have tried every option. There's only sell it, lease it, use it, these kinds of, there's only X number of options on the table. We've tried every one. What is it you think that has changed at this point?
Well, it's a project that is doable, feasible, and we have possible people to do it. I don't want to spend the time going through the history of it.
Yeah.
There were actually some missteps in the past about those decisions to rent or to turn it into municipal use. There were a lot of possibilities that in some ways detoured the ultimate goal of just putting the building back online. So, well, now, right here now, we reacted to the PVPA study. It
Yeah.
said the best use
Housing.
is market rate housing, 8 to 12 units, common conversion scenario. The building could be made to accommodate this use and is recommended. In fact, the second list on this recommendation was building demolished. It says not recommended. Building remain vacant, not recommended. So we followed this study as a redevelopment authority and said, maybe we could answer this criteria. And we went on that premise, and we were successful. So here we are, almost a year later. There is a moratorium on it. The people have spoken that they wish to preserve that building through the bylaw and then through the unanimous decision of the Historic Commission. That's where we are now. We're not at municipal use. We're not at rental to the regional library. We're not at charter school rental. I know, we all know the history. So I'd like to just go from now forward, and here we have 2 articles. And is there support of the selectmen for this type of project? I mean, there's no downside. The building will be there a year later if you want to knock it down, if it's not developed. There's financial considerations. The town is in very bad financial conditions. Here's a situation where we're spending money to put a building online and get revenue, not spend over $300,000 and have an empty field. That would cost another couple $100,000 to develop. So we'd just like to know, would this be something that at town meeting, we could have the support of the selectmen, and if not, what should we do differently?
And I think, Selectman Boyle, to answer your question directly, I think times have changed. I think that, and I think the use is what makes it so much more financially feasible. As we all know, the price of condominiums in Western Mass has been on the increase. And so the amount that you could charge for these condominiums makes the paying back the debt service for a developer much more plausible. I think the other thing is that you're giving them a building that's environmentally sound. And I think that the town willing to do that piece makes a huge difference, because let's make no mistake about it, part of what's going on here is that it'll be handed over to a developer with the town having abated the lead and having removed the asbestos. So a developer not having to take on that cost as part of their debt service, I think is different. So I think that, to answer your question, the difference between using it as town offices, which wouldn't produce any revenue and just cost of renovating, leasing it to charter schools that sometimes have financial stability and sometimes don't, and those other uses of 55 and elder housing, condominiums is a very different use. And as I said, we have a developer here today that believes that it's a financial feasibility and that he could make money if it was turned over to him in the condition we're talking about. So I think that's the real difference between what you've tried before and the proposal that the HRA is bringing before you tonight.
Personally, I have no problem with these articles being on the town warrant, so that the townspeople, can have a say once again as to what they feel is the proper use for the building. I think one of the questions, a question I have, and a question that I think would come up, is when you talk about a developer being interested and might be able to, make a go of it, is there any more concrete information you'll have prior to town meeting? That's a what if. We've had a lot of what ifs over the last 10 years, as Mr. Boyle alluded to, and so what if this happens? What's the next timeline? We keep having timelines, that's the last time. Well, that was 5 times ago, and here we are again having the same conversation, right? In the fall, that was going to be the last time when the RFP went out, and here we are. So when do we call it quits? And when do we give it our last best shot? And when do we come forward with a proposal that this is, if you vote this way or that way, this is what's going to happen? Will we have that by the middle of May?
Well, I think that can be developed fairly easily. I think we put right in the warrant article that the sale process would be commenced within 90 days of town meeting. That's essentially the RFP process to see if you get bids. The truth of the matter is that if nobody bids on it, it's done, and that's the end of it. If somebody does bid on it, then a timeline can certainly be put within that RFP as to when the sale will happen and the construction and the renovation will commence. And so I think that it's easy to represent to the town that this process can be thoroughly accomplished and determined whether it will go forward through the summer. Because if somebody hasn't bid on the RFP by then there isn't anything that can be done, and it needs to go back to demolition. This is the highest and best use, and it's either going to be bid on or it's not.
Thank you.
To answer, good.
Brian, also to sort of back that up, the HRA decided not to, for some very particular things. One is, I think that's what's confounded the process in the past is the town has just put this building out there and said, developer, figure out what to do with this. Oh, and by the way, there's this asbestos problem and all this other stuff. It just became overwhelming. Before we even thought about doing this article, we wanted to find out if, in fact, we even looked at it as the HRA. Could we do this? Okay. Are the costs per square foot prohibitive to the net result of selling the units themselves? We explored that very carefully. In fact, Nikki Sanderson is here, was our realtor consultant. We've had contractor consultants, John McKinnon, I think is here. And we came up with a number. We said, even if the HRA took this right now, we would be able to do this project. But in the process of doing all that, we came upon not one, but 2 or 3 developers who said, well, oh, you have a specific idea, 55 and over? Okay, that's good. You're going to clean up the environmental issues? Well, that's a big unknown. That sure helps us. And by doing this, even if we do that part of it, you're more than halfway there to demolition if, as Donna says, we don't succeed. You're already, it's not like you're starting back at 0, because the asbestos, the lead paint, all of that's removed. And if Associated Records wants to come in with the ball, most of the work is done. There's a second issue there too, is that if we segregate the abatement of the environmentals, there's chances are we'll get better bids than trying to do it as a whole package. I can tell you this from personal experience, because I've taken, as Jeff knows, I've taken in the last 2 years, I took down a brick building that had asbestos and lead paint and things. What I learned from that experience was separate the two, because you're going to get different bids, and if you give it all to one, like Associated, they have to now subcontract to somebody else. In essence, back to what Donna says, if we feel really very confident this is a go, and we wouldn't want to wear egg on our face, or have the town wear egg on its face, to even ask for this again. We know everybody's exasperated. A lot of people will go up to the microphone at town meeting and go, oh no, not again. We all know that's gonna happen. But what we're going to do, and you're right, Brian, it's up to us to really educate people and let them know this is a really good, solid project.
Do you want that education tonight? I mean, we have a developer in the audience that could say a few words about this project.
No, we don't need that. Back to your question about the board. You know, we had this discussion with you some months ago. I mean, it's a responsibility of the board to execute town meeting's decisions. And we're on a path to execute the decision that town meeting made. I don't think, I'll speak for myself, Brian's spoken for himself, and we're not voting on the warrant tonight, but I don't think there's going to be any objection to putting these on the ballot and allowing town meeting to take one more bite of this apple. I think maybe this is necessary to finally drive it to some final resolution. Now, that's different from saying we're going to be up there advocating. We're there to respond to.
Why wouldn't you?
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Larry, but nor should we be expected to negate the impact of prior decisions of townspeople. That's the issue that I have as we bring it to the table. However, I do agree with my colleagues. If the wish of townspeople is to have it brought forward one more time, fine. And then it's over and done with, one way or the other. However, I don't think we can minimize the validity and significance of the prior votes. That was a good portion of what we know to be the basis of town meeting. So
There were issues with the prior vote. It was a confusing vote. It was premised.
No, that's your assumption. That's your assumption.
Well, that's all we can ask is that, you know, they be put on on the ballot. Certainly, you know, you've heard from Donna and Chris and Larry that this will bring income into the town. We have developers ready to go. And as Donna said, let it just go one more time, and when it's done and we follow the process, if we don't get any bidders, it's done. It's done, because how many times are you gonna keep going out with an RFP? So let's just get it on the ballot, let the voters make their decisions, and we go from there.
Yes, Mike?
One other comment, and Donna talked about this, the market has changed. I think before a lot of potential uses for that building were perhaps some pie in the sky kinds of things that people were thinking about. But now I think not only is there a concept, but there's a proof of concept in hand, as is evidenced by the fact that there is a developer that's very seriously interested in this building, has plans that exist at this point to support the concept that the HRA has been talking about, and feels that it is a very viable opportunity for him as a developer and perhaps others who have focused in on that kind of use for those buildings. So, you know, the other thing too, I think the attributes in addition to what Lynn was talking about in terms of tax monies coming in and preserving the building, whatever, is that this concept, this particular concept, this opportunity, deals with the issues that most townspeople have really had concerns with over the years. We do not lose the athletic fields. Those fields, that real estate is still in control of the town, in the hands of the town. It is not involved in this opportunity. And furthermore, as I understand it, the town will, in the long term, have the ability to retain control of that real estate. I think that's a critical issue for you guys to hear and for the community to hear. That the town will have a right of first refusal whenever someone decides, or if and when someone decides to sell that real estate, either in whole or in part. So, you know, those are two issues that people have always had a concern about. What's going to happen to the athletic fields, and will we ever be able to maintain control of that real estate in the long term, just in case the community wants to do something else with it in the long term. And this particular opportunity resolves those issues. So, you know, I think that it's something that the board should seriously consider, if not supporting it, counseling the town, guiding the community, even though the community, yes, has made some decisions in the past out of frustration and out of just sheer wanting to resolve this issue with this building, and you feel an obligation to follow those decisions, it may be that with your counsel and your guidance, the community would vote to reconsider those decisions and feel favorably disposed of this project, which to me is a win-win. I can't imagine the community not wanting to, rather than taking money to demolish that building, take it to rehabilitate it, to resolve the environmental issues, make it available for a developer for sale, and have a developer develop it, preserve the building. We've got a $3 or $4 million asset after that. We'll be receiving tax money on an ongoing basis, which is badly needed, as you know, to help subsidize the challenging budgets that we're faced with now and in the future. And we still have the center school, we still have the land behind it, and we still got the land underneath it, and the building itself.
Just one clarification for folks. Are we back to the 2008 version of what conveys? Essentially, a little parking area off down below on the
Actually, no.
north side? Or?
Because the zoning our zoning bylaw, we're talking about congregate housing.
Yeah.
And so, we can put a much smaller footprint on the building. So we're actually talking about 33,400 square feet. So that's even too small to put a single-family house on today in town center. But our congregate zoning bylaw allows this. And the parking is one parking space per every 2 dwellings.
Oh,
I know, which is very unusual, but we're not doing that. We're actually, why we picked that 33,400 is because it encompasses that parking that exists right there, which is 18 parking spaces. But also, we show a plan in which the town, if it so chose, could add, butt up to it, more parking for the field. So that they, because we're gonna have to segregate the parking for the building, of course, and we don't want a lot of cars out, and they are. When the games are here, you see them all up and down the street. So perhaps the town, because we're gonna get revenue, could in another year or so, maybe do some parking there to help mitigate for the field hockey games.
but right now, the conveyance would be essentially the top part, the building, the sides, and then the
Not the
little
sides,
parking.
Not the
it-
sides.
because we left the sides for
Well, it's
sufficient
access-
access to go down on
There has
both
to be access
sides,
on both
so.
sides, yeah.
There's 280
Okay.
280 feet of frontage. This would only take 200 feet, leaving 25 to the north and 55 to the south. Access to the town on either side, and of course, the walkway to the dike and
Great.
road and access. Yeah, none of that would be touched. So by virtue of this lot being too small, you couldn't put a strip mall there, you couldn't do any other thing but congregate housing or 55 over housing under our zoning.
Very good. Anything else?
Fine.
Understand,
Fine with the articles going forward.
I don't sense any issue about putting these on the ballot. Go from there
More
and
townspeople shall speak.
drive it to resolution.
That goes for all of us.
Finance committee review, like, do we get their endorsement or?
Finance committee will,
How does that work?
well, they go through each one, and they'll do that on their own process and decide which one finance committee supports, or,
Do they need
Does
to,
not.
or should we meet with them if they have questions in that regard?
that's between you and,
Oh, okay,
Sure.
fine, we'll do that, just,
Thank you very
All right,
much
thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
I don't know if this will affect your discussion on the demolition plan, but you want to hold off and see how these articles go, or?
oh, no, I don't, I think we're pretty well set on, we're prepared to execute if that's the decision. And I think Marlene's going to report on coordination on the confirmation of the bids, some coordination with the Attorney General's office, and we're all set.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. DPW?
The water and sewer rates, Michael obviously couldn't, excuse me, attend today. He did email me today. What it looks like using the old data of 2009, the water conservation grant that we received. So I mean, I know it's late notice, but unfortunately it happened today, this afternoon. So we can surely take a quick look at it and see what the impact will be in regards to it.
Well, we're not going to have time to do that on the fly here. That's going to take some,
And he's more than glad to come in and discuss it with us. So,
ready?
no, but yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing now. We're meeting jointly with the Finance Committee. And two items. One, we're going to walk through the draft of the warrant. And then second, we're going to talk to some of the issues remain in the budget for fiscal year 17 and form a way ahead. First item, just spent a few minutes going through the warrant. I guess we can do it by the numbers.
What are you going through first, Jeff?
The warrant, it won't take very long.
Okay.
Small this year.
First article having to do with selection of town officers. I'm not going to read the whole thing, those coming up for election. Second, there's a deficit in the fiscal year 16 Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. So there's an article here to raise funds to cover that. What's that, about 7,000 now? on that?
60, actually, 60,000.
Okay.
That's for
The-
16, fiscal year
Oh,
16.
16, okay. The next one is a standard one about applying for grants and gifts and acceptance of awards. Next article is for the town treasurer to essentially.
Sorry.
Sure.
The
go ahead.
deficit on Article 2, what do we think that, what was the number on that we're looking at?
As of last week,
Were we at
60 plus.
60, so probably figure 65 just
Last
to
week,
make
they were
sure.
looking at 58,000, and there was still work to be done.
Still working on it.
I was
So-
for the water break on Route 5,
Right, so 65,
hopefully. As long as
hopefully.
Mass DOT doesn't,
Come up with another 8 inches of asphalt you gotta put down?
That, I'm sorry, that does relate to a
Right.
break.
Thank you, sorry, just
No,
needed
that's fine.
clarification on that.
Article 4 allows the treasurer to do banking. Article 5 votes to appropriate the funds that we might get from the state for, under Chapter 90 for our roads and bridges. Article 6, this is an article that would allow the town moderator not to waste a lot of time with, in terms of declaring two-thirds vote, but rather when it's absolutely clear that it's a two-thirds vote, he can just declare it as it's two-thirds. There is a catch here. If 7 people object, then you go through a regular count.
Who put that in? Is that
The town clerk.
Whose direction?
This is pardon?
Probably
Did
the
someone ask the
moderator.
town clerk to put it on?
Town clerk submitted it. Whether she did this in conjunction with the town moderator, I don't know. It's simply an acceptance of an existing Massachusetts law.
Yeah.
Article 7, and this is another one from the town clerk about acceptance of a
So
mass.
basically what that means is when one person objects, one
Yeah.
person says nay and everyone else says yay,
Yeah.
you don't have to stand up and count 172 people and one person.
Right.
Well, or if 25 people say
Right.
nay and the rest supposedly say yay, then even if those 25 people call for a roll call vote, then it won't be entered in the roll call vote.
No,
Up to 7 people
if
object.
7 people.
people object.
Okay, so, yeah, so they have to
But
coordinate.
Unless none of the 25 people
Right.
object.
They
then
have to
yes.
coordinate, yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think it was a problem. It doesn't happen much like that. And it's leaving a lot of discretion to the moderator.
Again,
If 7 people
If
at town
7
meeting
people
disagree
object,
with
they
the
can say
moderator,
so.
it leaves no discretion.
Right.
If it's not 7 people objecting, then it's highly unlikely it's gonna be 2/3, would you think?
Right.
another one by town clerk, accepting Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, 101A, 110A, whereas any public office may remain closed on any and all Saturdays, as may be determined from time to time. I think what this is really trying to get at is town clerk's office doesn't have to be open on the Saturday before an election. Is that, I'm not sure exactly what her,
She'll explain it on the
she
floor.
could explain it.
Yep.
To the next one, Article 8, authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the Hatfield Renewables LLC. As you recall, in a special town meeting, we secured town meeting approval to enter in negotiations regarding a payment in lieu of taxes. And now we're just about concluded an agreement and expect to have that available for town meeting's approval. The next, authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept a donation of an acre of land abutting Town Hall property from the trustees of Smith Academy to be used for a park, with conditions that the town maintain the property in good order, maintain a place within the park for Smith Academy cornerstone, and maintain a place within the park for the monument to Sophia Smith, the founder of Smith Academy, both of which are on the premises. The next one is submitted by Community Preservation. This is with respect to that same parcel of property to allocate $97,315 from CPC funds toward the rehabilitation and restoration of the park there. So one is to convey the land from the Smith Academy trustees to the town, and two, CPC is proposing to allocate some of their funds to for a first phase of a park on the site. The Article 11, again, relates to that same thing. And asks, again, talks to the overall cost of the phase that they're trying to do in improving the park, and cites the contribution in the previous article of CPC, and also asked the town to authorize to come up with $50,000, essentially to leverage a state fund under the Parklands Acquisition and Renovations Community Grant Program. Has to be, only a community can go in applying for that grant.
I don't know.
Not private enterprises. Article
Hey,
12.
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
On Article 10,
Okay.
CPC is putting up 97,000? Is that right?
Yes.
Where's the other 100 coming from?
97,315 and 97,318.
There's two 97s
It's
there.
a total of 194,633
All of that is coming
from
from
community
CPC.
preservation.
Okay,
Right.
great.
One's from their
Oh,
reserve
open
account
space.
and the other's from the open
The
space.
two different accounts. Great, thank you. They do have a general reserve, yeah.
Article 12, this is submitted by the Redevelopment Authority, asking town to rescind the authorization, an earlier town meeting, to demolish the center school, and it goes on to describe it legally.
Can we just go back to 11 and 12?
Sure.
Just since we're on television, we should talk about it
Okay.
a little bit, in that the park being proposed, and I know they have a gazebo thing that they want to build and all that. The only issue we as the finance committee have talked about is there's no money in the budget to actually maintain the property. So it's great that we can build the property, but Phil put in a new hire to help, in part, to monitor that or take care of that, and we simply didn't have enough money in the budget in order to take that hire. So, as a finance committee, that is one of the concerns we have, is it's great we can build it, but finding the money to maintain it and keeping it looking really nice and doing it properly is a concern of ours.
Well,
Well, also, I think that's only phase one.
excuse me, excuse me.
Right, that's only the gazebo.
Right.
Well, I'll just spend 2 seconds on the whole thing. I think the total project cost is about $338,000. They've segmented this into two phases. A first phase, which would simply deal with the walkways and the shrubbery and the landscaping,
Okay.
which is the phase they're talking about here for this town meeting. And then as a follow-on phase would assemble and build out the gazebo itself.
Right.
So the tact or the argument is, well, in this first phase, simply dealing and being funded here, getting the landscaping straight and bringing in the walkways, there's really not much more
Right.
to do this year or this upcoming year. It would be in the follow-on, once you got the gazebo in there, when then you're into events, trash cleanup,
Right.
and all the rest. So you're right, you're absolutely right. When we do these things, we need to be considering the operating costs, and there is a tail down the road here very soon.
Right,
The-
right, and
The initial tail is simply.
Right,
some
the
lawn
initial
mowing.
tail's not too bad because we can, Phil can still handle the lawn mowing
Right.
and the upkeep over there and whatever else, but
You're right,
as we go forward, as a town, we need to carefully consider
yes.
that.
Okay, we're back on 12, redevelopment authority, asking for rescission of the vote to demolish Center School and the associated funding, $300,000 and $92,000 for the, one for the tear down as well as the remediation.
Right.
Article 13, again, related to the same thing, same topic. Redevelopment Authority is proposing that the town declare it surplus. The area of the center school is surplus, and proposes that it be sold, the process beginning within about 90 days after town meeting. Subject to the following restrictions: portion of the parcel, 33,400 square feet with frontage on Main Street, be sold with the building. The building reuse be limited to 55 and older housing condominiums. The remaining tax-owned, town-owned playing fields behind and other parts of the real estate not be included in the proposed sale. Any future use be compatible with the historic setting of town center. Current buildings not be demolished and the historical facade features of the building not be substantially altered on the north, south, and west or street side. Further, the sum of $300,000 be raised and appropriated, transferred from available funds, borrowed or otherwise appropriated for asbestos, lead paint removal, and any other necessary environmental cleanup of the building to make it ready for sale, and any other costs related thereto or to the sale. The next,
Well, you want to talk about this?
sure, HRA is here to
So,
talk to their article.
So a couple of questions that popped to my mind. One, I know the selectmen have the authority to actually, would be given to sell it, but would the redevelopment authority be the one that are kind of overseeing the project, so to speak? Is that in this article?
I'm not the lawyer, but this does not convey custody and control of the building from HRA, or from the Board of Selectmen to anyone. So the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen still retains custody, care, and control.
And why would the town spend $300,000 to remove the asbestos when we would sell the building and insist that the people, whoever bought it, would take care of that?
Well, two reasons. One, you're gonna spend the money to knock it down, you have to remediate the asbestos and the lead. So we're talking about preparing the building for a developer, because financially, it's probably begins to cross the viability line if you put that on a developer. to have to clean up our mess, to then rebuild, repurpose the building. So that's what, the articles were actually in the other order, and I don't know if you could switch them back again, where if the project is supported by town meeting, 2/3 vote, then the rescinding of the demolition could follow. Otherwise, if it doesn't get supported, then you could knock the building out. You don't need to rescind anything. But,
This is a draft, Larry. This was
That
put
makes
together a week ago, so yeah, we're just,
so it could be switched. But I mean, we just ended a hearing in this room where we probably had over 20 people here, including a developer and his architect that are candidates for bidding on this building as a over 55 project. And so it does ask the town to spend money that they've already agreed to spend on the remediation. Except now, instead of a hole in the ground that we're gonna have to hire somebody to maintain with another park, it would be revenue estimates between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, and get the building online, lit up, people living downtown, over 55.
If you pay $300,000 for abatement, do you expect to recoup that on the sale of the building?
No, we'll recoup it through cash flow of the $50,000 a year tax revenue.
I'm not, my brother has done a building, a school building, and I'm certain that that building wasn't abated or guaranteed free of all asbestos and so on and so forth when he bought it. So I don't know why we would do that.
If I may interject, what we're talking about is if the town demolishes the building as is on the schedule now, the town needs to spend that money prior to demolition.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But the town has to borrow the money to do that.
Correct. In
This
both
is
cases.
not money that we have, and so if we're gonna sell it as a finance me on the finance board, I'm gonna say, if we're not gonna demolish it, I would just as soon save the 300,000. If we're gonna sell the building, that's great, but I still, like Fran, don't understand why the developer would not be responsible.
Just, I mean, I'm making an assumption as well that it would actually cost the town potentially more to do this than it might cost a developer to do, given the process that we would.
Well, it might, because the town bid it as a demolition and an abatement, where I think if we bid it just as an abatement, it would be a lot less. And we didn't have a firm number. We had to rely on the 300 because the bidders didn't split up the remediation and the demolition. So it is possible that it's 200,000 to do it. But your earlier question of why is, frankly, if we spent $299,000 to get that building ready for a developer, we're ahead of the game. Because you're ready to spend $300,000 to knock it down.
Well, and plus, like you're saying, the potential tax income down the line, you're gonna get no tax income.
4 years,
eventually left.
4 years, 5 years, we paid for our remediation.
Would we assume, though, that the building is not worth $300,000?
There is a figure.
Do we have a guess at that?
Worth,
I don't
Well,
know.
because if the building is worth $301,000, then we could sell it for $1,000 and let the.
oh, I would
let
think
the
that it's gonna
developer
be
take
sold
care of
for
the
almost
300.
nothing. It could be given away. Again, it doesn't matter.
If the town knocks it down for 300,000, we have an open space available to the town.
What's the town gonna do with it?
Well, it belongs to the town, whatever it is, whatever the future generation decides to do with it, it belongs to the town. If you sell it, it no longer.
We're not selling the field, all we're selling is the footprint of the building and the parking spots behind it. There's no additional land associated with this.
And
If
there
you were
could,
insinuating that, we were ahead of the game by selling it for $299, in actual fact, if we destroy it, we still retain the open space for the.
We don't need I don't see what we need the open space for, though. We've got thousands of acres of open space.
Just to answer that, Phil is asking 47,000 for a 1 acre park. What if you talking a 7 acre park? What's that cost?
I'm not getting
Not to
into
mention, you're gonna spend $500,000 on a 1-acre park, what's it gonna cost to turn that into a
No,
park?
no, but I think what we're saying is 7 acres of land with frontage on Main Street in the town of Hatfield has value. Even if there's no building on it, it's actually probably has considerable value.
Oh, yeah, but we're not touching the back, we're not touching 6 of those acres, 6.5 of those acres.
And we're still allowing access to the north and south,
Yeah, the fields are there, the recreation is there.
right, which is what the town wants.
I mean, I think you're making a great case if this is actually a viable plan, and I don't know, because I understand there's a lot of history behind this, so maybe it's not viable,
Sean.
but the idea that you could actually save a historical building and reuse it for a purpose that could generate tax income for the same amount that it would cost to destroy the building seems like a relative no-brainer to me. I mean, I'd rather be getting tax income from that. I'd rather be able to see the historical aspects of the building rather than another big open space right there across the street from a brand-new park that we're gonna put in place. If it's possible, then it makes sense, I would think.
Well, we want to give it a shot. I mean, that's why when we met with the selectmen an hour ago, we said, let's give it a shot. And our attorney said that, she said, what do you got to lose? If it doesn't work in 6 months, go ahead and knock it down. But we have a viable guy, a developer, and,
You're really, what we're doing is we're keeping the process moving by taking care of the asbestos and the lead paint. So if something that didn't happen, but to answer your question, Sean, we don't want to wear egg on our face either. We don't want the town to wear egg on its face. That's why we didn't even propose this until we had a very certain developer who said they would come in tomorrow.
If it was abated.
Abated, yes.
So
But
the developer
understand-
is driving the abatement, the developer.
no,
No, it's not.
we met with a lot, and I know the project your brother did in Florence was a little different calculus. It's a commercial building, and it was, I don't know what abatement he did at all that he had to do.
Okay, here's
It's
one other
it's
factor.
just very unusual for a community that's trying to get rid of surplus property to go through the abatement process. They're getting rid of the property to avoid having to spend money on the abatement process.
No, that isn't our
Doesn't make any-
thinking.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, that's not our thinking. Our thinking is we're going through the reuse process to get it on the tax rolls and liven this downtown up. Otherwise, we have an open field and a $300,000 park and nothing. But if we had 10 or 11 units in there of over 55, people walking around, using the library, using everything, that changes this town center forever.
Okay, Fran, and that is the other issue. We're also, in this article, saying specifically what it will be reused for. So there's no chance that if that doesn't succeed, and it will, we know, we've already sold 3 units sight unseen, okay? We know there's a demand, we saw it up on Elm Street. What you're doing is by putting 55 and over here is the ideal location for it. Rewind the tape, you can see more about why we say this. But what we're basically coming to here is this is a win for the town. We're telling the community exactly how that's going to be preserved and what it's going to be used for. The footprint of 33,400 square feet, this is very small, the existing parking and basically the building, 200 feet of frontage out of 280, can't be used for even a single-family house or a commercial use. It is essentially, if it doesn't get used for 55 and over, it can't be used for anything else.
So there's one developer.
We have one
You have one
confirmed
developer.
right
One
now.
developer that has
And we've
plans
had-
and
We've
everything.
had situations
that's
in the
done
past
plans.
where there were several developers that expressed an interest, and then in the end, everybody walked away. There
Not
was-
really.
They didn't walk away, they weren't awarded the,
2008, we could have had it sold and you know it.
yeah,
So just one quick question, that you said 9 or 10 units, I assume you ran this through the planning board because you have to have you have to have a certain amount of acreage associated
zoning.
yes, we had 2
With-
attorneys look at it.
Congregate
with,
zoning.
because in the 2008 or whatever, we
Right.
outlined the exterior.
That's not necessary
It's
anymore,
not necessary,
because it's over 55.
right. It's
Over
congregate housing.
55, so it's congregate
The
housing.
only thing we need is 14,000 square feet, that's it.
And they'd be sewer and water customers.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
which might help the enterprise deficit.
How about this one, Daryl? You only need one parking space for every 2 units.
Yeah, we're giving more spots than that, but
We're giving 18,
Yeah, I know.
But-
so.
Oh, so that's why it's over 55.
yes.
Okay.
All right, I was gonna
That-
raise that question, 'cause I
Yeah.
mean, that seems like a concern, you know, that all the new development that's taking place in Hatfield is over 55.
That's
And
why.
in a community that we're trying to run our own school system in, you know, that the only people we're bringing in are likely people without children in the school system. It just, over the long haul, you know what I mean, it lends itself towards no longer having a school system
You've got
because.
a school committee person, ask him what it would be like if we decided to fill the school with our own kids as opposed to 25% of the school being choice.
No, I'm not arguing that cash benefit today. What I'm saying is, if the school becomes 75% choice, are you gonna get people to go to town meeting and vote
Right.
to keep funding a school that no kids from Hatfield go to?
Right, they won't care.
Like that, they won't care. That's my concern. Now,
Yeah.
I understand today, cash-wise, it makes sense. But I'm saying, there's gotta be a tipping point at which point you can't get support for it anymore, that's all.
Well,
But
we
we
had-
did,
And you're only talking 10 to 12 units.
but what we did meet, when we met, we did want to, since this is a 2/3 article that requires the same money that was voted last town meeting, we were hoping to get finance committee support on this article, if you have to weigh in on it. Because I think that,
Like, what we're asking really
Or
is for the
not,
town to
what's the time?
subsidize a developer's project. And I think if ultimately the town can benefit from it, I mean, I think, you know, cities and towns make these decisions every day, so.
Belchertown
maybe we're-
remediated the state hospital.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
developers,
to add to that, Sean, a key difference here is, we're telling the developer exactly what they can use it for.
Finance
And
committee
there's no difference. They can't vary from it.
So we as a finance committee, we know we're probably gonna meet next week. We know with the budget that we're gonna get close, but we have some things we wanna talk to. And that's one of the things that we have to go through is really look at the articles and decide that. I don't think that's anything that we're planning on deciding tonight, since we have other things to get to, so.
Not been decided in the past, and it won't get decided tonight.
Right.
The issue,
But thank you, I appreciate all the input.
the issue of gaining revenue has been up every time it was considered for sale and turned down.
Right.
There's a variety of factors. Many folks just would simply rather retain control of the space than see it.
well, when it,
You only
gone.
had 50,000 in new growth this year. How would you like to double it?
yeah, we doubled the new growth in Hatfield. And also, you know, it's not 40 low-income units, which was presented to the town at the last meeting, that they voted against.
Right.
This is reality, so,
Okay, well, again,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks. So should we come or send Chris to finance committee meeting to answer questions, or,
I'd like to.
If you'd like to, yeah,
so he'll call you and coordinate what time you?
yeah. Yeah.
You have my email?
Yeah, you can email me, or I'll email you when the meeting is.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Article 14 is one from Open Space. See if the town will authorize the Board of Selectmen to take such action essentially as to add a conservation restriction to the deed on the back acreage behind Center School.
Right.
We haven't really had a good discussion of that. I'm not sure.
Have you talked to the open space
No,
about this?
No, not at all. They're the ones proposing it, and why would we do that without first having a plan for the,
Right.
it's entirely within our control, the whole area. Why would we put the conservation easement on up front? Let's decide what it is we want to do with it first, and then,
Right.
Well, yeah, I don't honestly see why you would put a conservation easement on any land that the town owns.
not enough
Why
open
would we
space.
not let the town,
Decide.
future generations of people who live in the town
Yeah.
decide what they want to do? Rather than tell them today, 150 years from now, when you're sitting down, looking at that piece of property, you can't use it because today, in our infinite wisdom, we decided that it
Right.
wasn't the right thing for you to do.
Right.
I-
Well, again, we haven't voted on these either, so.
Right.
The next one, this has to do with the town hall. asking to raise, borrow up to $850,000 to fund Town Hall renovation Phase 2, which will complete our code requirements for the ramps, elevator, and fire suppression. And there's also an article on the ballot associated with this, because it'd be debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion.
Again, background, when we did the first phase of the town hall renovation, exceeded the assessed value. Once you exceed 35% of the assessed value, you're required to bring the entire facility to code. We never got a waiver from Americans with Disability Act requirements. We simply got a time variance from the State Department of Safety Architectural Access Board. And our due date for completion, 5 years, expires 1 September 18, which was to mean everything's completed, elevators installed, inspected, operational, it's all done. So that's the timing we need to get on this in this coming year. Next one, 16. This is vote to a sum of money to conduct an infiltration study. And this has to do with DPD, with permitting and looking for leaks to its system. And
How much money?
it's 40. The next one is Capital Planning and Board of Selectmen transfers sum of money to develop a master plan for wastewater maintenance expansion. Again, this was dealing with a variety of DEP inspection findings, and as well to look at how we might address shortfalls we've been experiencing in sewer. The Article 18 has to do with completion of the sewer work on North Street. Recall, we did it in 2 phases. The first phase is complete, and it roughly comes from King Street down to the bend in the road as it comes out to Main Street. And then the other, this would bring that to a conclusion by running the sewer out to the Main Street area. That was broken up because of the topography and hydraulics of the area. It made sense economically because there was no pitch really in the sewer before. So this makes sense in terms of how the project was split. And the other piece is this will complete all that work there, and we'd be able to come in and finish off the roads. Next, Article 19 has to do with making some water service repairs on Valley and South Street. We've been trying to get that done for a couple of years here, and then we could pave also. Article 20, each year has to do with the fire department securing gear for its fire protection clothing for its members, and they do a portion each year, and they're asking here for $20,000. The next has to do with community preservation. I won't read it all, but in essence, each town meeting, community preservation estimates the money that it's being put into its various accounts. It's required by law to put the money in certain accounts: historic, community housing, open space, a reserve. And then the following year, we have to go back and clean it up. And then, again, the next article is, again, the projection for the following year. So that's what Article 22 is. Article 23, this is the authorization for certain revolving funds that the town has for building, electrical, plumbing, gas inspectors, also for DPW's motor oil and fire chiefs for dealing with hazardous materials. And there's certain spending limits on each of them. Article 24, here we're essentially the main budget article. And then, any reports?
Quick question. I didn't see an article related to the emergency water hookup. We don't need to have that voted on again since we rescinded it at the special town meeting?
Well, right now, we're still dealing with a shortfall,
Yeah,
still closing a shortfall.
I mean, that just seems quite strange to me that at town meeting, we vote to move forward with something that involves action on another person's part, another town's part, and then, you know, we bail on it and not even present it at the next year's town meeting, especially when that other side actually did their piece. It just doesn't really, it doesn't seem like a way to do business to me, you know, which is concerning, and it's relatively small. I mean, we're talking a
$20,000
commitment. I just think it's unfortunate that it's not included here based on how it was presented, you know, last year. It's an emergency sort of accommodation, it's something in partnership with someone else, and we're bailing on it.
Well, I hear you, Sean, but in fairness, it was voted on at the following town meeting in the fall to undo that. I mean, so town
Post the
meeting.
work actually being done by the other side, I'm just saying that that's a bad business
I hear you,
practice.
but the reality is town meeting voted twice. First time was to move forward, and the second one was to put it on hold due to the budget constraints.
And we feel it'd be a much better position this coming fiscal year to do
Yeah.
that.
I don't disagree with you. I just want to make sure, you know, that
Well, not
both
this coming fiscal year,
things,
you mean
both
the
were,
next.
both town meetings were mentioned, that's all.
Fiscal year. Again, I mean, my position is, you know, God forbid an emergency. It's easy to, you know, sit here today and say, you know, it'll be fine waiting 2 years. Well, you put emergency things in place because emergencies do come up. And I think that'd be quite a shame, and I think, you know, we would have some responsibility there, especially if the emergency was to our neighbors, but, you know, that's not even the point, really. It's when you make a commitment involving another partner. I think you gotta try to find a way to come through on.
And I think, Sean, that if it became an absolute necessity, there could be an emergency hookup.
Yes.
I would imagine,
Oh, yeah.
so that we're not walking away from this. And there was nothing, I don't think, in the original agreement that said it had to be done simultaneously. It was whenever Northampton could get it done, whenever Hatfield could get it done, and the two things would be available.
Yeah, it's just a matter of crossing under 5
Yeah.
and putting a valve in. If something did happen, if there was emergency on either side, either Northampton or our side, we can surely hook up through a fire hose
Right.
system. But,
Right.
I mean, it's more of a convenience just to turn a valve and run fire hose, but, I mean, certainly, you know, I would just want to assure everybody that if something does happen, we have the ability to hook into their system and name as into ours
Vice
as
versa.
well. The only other thing is the generators. I didn't see the article. Is there an article? Does there have to be an article about the emergency generators?
Yeah, we should,
I haven't received any information.
well, we should have an article. Well, we haven't acted on the capital budgeting thing.
I thought that was part of the lease that you have now for July 1st of last year that's on that list.
It is,
Okay, so that was voted last year, correct?
but it was not vote on that list last year. The generators weren't
Okay.
on that list. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, I don't know, my understanding is you updated that list to All-American.
The discussion is about the two generators. One, we discussed this in capital planning, and there was a strong sense that we needed to get on with it. Significant budget issues. So we addressed it with DPW through their lease program. And one generator would be to support the town hall, and particularly, it would be sized to support an elevator, where you've got seniors using it among others, if power went out. And the other generator was going to go up to the highway garage where, you know, at a time you might well need power to pump your gas or those kinds of things. There's no ability there, so this would be a generator at that location. It was being funded out of his operating budget, existing operating budget with no increase.
Which was voted last year.
Right.
I just didn't know if there had to be an article, because we removed it from capital planning, we removed the funding source.
We've left.
You're
we've
funding
left-
it out of your operating budget,
No,
which
we-
was
we left
voted
it-
at
we
town
left it,
meeting.
We left it in the capital plan and identified the funding source as the operating budget.
Okay.
Yeah,
So is it in this budget?
yes.
Yes, it's just in the DPW operating.
How much is the lease?
No, the lease, the actual lease number that has been passed for the past 5 years
There's no
is
change.
not gonna be increased because of the cost of some of the vehicles. Some of the key vehicles dropped, so
Just
there's
on the
extra,
vehicle.
there's access money in that lease program. So instead of purchasing another vehicle or doing whatever, we said, well, I went to the lease company and asked if we could lease the generator's costs out of that, and the bank agreed to it, so. It's really a win-win, I mean.
Yeah, it's great.
I would cover the town hall, the elementary already has one, plus the highway.
Right. Plus you're going out back here.
High school's got their own,
No.
The only building that doesn't have it. But
but in any emergency, we'd be at
we'd
the,
have this building in the elementary. school.
this building in the elementary. Okay,
You probably wouldn't be operating the high school.
no.
You had an extended period of time without power.
No.
I guess.
Well, and the only thing you would need is if it was some sort of emergency or bringing people to stay at the high school or at the
Right, so
school.
you would use the elementary school.
Or run a
Yeah,
heating system
yeah.
in the winter.
How can you do that though?
Okay,
Other than the HRA issue with respect to their articles, any other significant concerns or we want to come back to?
I would guess we need to digest this and
Okay,
talk about it, and, because I think for some, this is probably But- first glance, but at a first glance, I don't, all comes down to money, what we can afford.
talk now about the budget.
Yep.
Marlene, why don't you walk
Okay.
us through?
Should we go right to the operating budget
Marlene, why don't you start with the first front page?
page? Sure.
And
Oh,
and
the
the
summary, the
changes,
financial summary?
the changes that you made that
Okay.
all of a sudden made the budget look a whole lot better.
Sure. Okay, so the top half, the top portion under expenses, you have your operating budget, the annual town meeting articles, state and other charges. That has not changed right now. And then, so you have a total gross budget of $11,574,005.69. State receipts.
Which is $400,000 less than last year.
Right. Local receipts, we were able to, we took a look at our receipts, the local fees, and we were able to increase those. So that helped offset the bottom number. So you have your enterprise fund, water and sewer enterprise fund revenues, community preservation. We're using 96,000 of free cash and stabilization. Giving us a total receipts of $4,509,706.
Yeah, for the
Let me
benefit of the finance committee, that's a proposed draw from stabilization, and we'll get to it.
And I'm not seeing that number here, so is that the other available funds? It's not just listed on the same line as stabilization?
You talking about the 60,000 we would be using from
Can you show
stabilization?
me where you
Is that
see
what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not seeing.
No.
it.
There's no number on the first page.
Read the rest of it.
Right, right.
All right.
So
Move to
fiscal
other-
year 17,
Yeah.
in 16, at the special town meeting, we used $147,715 from stabilization. That is in the other available funds, that $477,410 in fiscal year 16. And to the right, fiscal year 17 column,
Yeah,
we are proposing to use money from stabilization to fund the water and sewer deficit, the fiscal year
This year's water and sewer district.
There's an article.
And so what would that bring stabilization to?
I did not bring, let me see, do I have that with me here? I just had that number the other day. I believe it was 351,000.
Before the 60 or after?
No, it was wasn't it 351, and then we took 147 out? And then we took then if we take another 60 out, so we would be somewhere around 150,000? I don't know, Derek, my math doesn't work that fast.
I think we threw 30,000 in.
I just had that the other day.
30.
We did not put any money into stabilization.
That annual town
147 came out of free cash.
Right.
Yeah, that would have been it starting. But,
Daryl, didn't the 147 at our last town meeting come out of free cash? That's where we transferred it from, not stabilization?
No, it all came out of
stabilization, could not take it
We
from.
can't use the free cash.
Right, right.
Because it's not certified.
Ah,
At that time.
It was, we were
not
talking
certified.
about, I got it, right,
Right, and that's,
right, okay.
I received a report from the accountant the other day. I just don't have it with me.
that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be good to get that number.
Yes, I will send it out to you tomorrow.
And how,
So then the other
how
change,
much are you anticipating, how much are we anticipating, how much is being held in free cash right now that's unusable?
$2,000.
$2,000.
That's unusable though.
Oh, unused,
The
we're certified
unusable-
98,000,
Right.
right.
Yeah,
And
what's the state holding,
they held
100,000?
109,000,
Okay, so there's another 109,000.
9,000, right.
109.
So that will become available later on in the year. Yes,
After town meeting.
yes.
This past year, we used free cash.
How much free cash did we use the past year?
Yeah.
So now we've got,
It's right there,
234,
Sean, highlighted in
581.
fiscal year 16.
yeah, 234, yeah.
You've got roughly the same, you don't have it available, but.
Yeah.
We have roughly the
Well,
same.
no, we only have 109 available, right? Well, once
No.
it becomes available.
It
No,
will,
you
109 in addition to the
The
96,
98.
or the
96.
98.
there's 109,528.
So you have 200,000, essentially 109,000, which you can't use,
Right.
roughly, yeah.
September, October.
And that's if, well, and we'll get to the sewer deficit, so.
Before we make a firm decision on the entire package, I would like to revisit the police department. I'm not quite sure
we'll
where we're
get
at.
there.
Okay.
We'll get
All right, thank you.
The other change was in new growth.
Right.
We are aware that there will be additional new growth. 75,000 is still a conservative number, but we were able to increase that from 50,000.
Right.
Therefore, right now, at the bottom of that page, you see that we're over the levy limit by 64,073.
And can you just, and maybe I missed it, the enterprise fund revenue, I see that we're projecting more this year than last year.
Are you looking at the sheet, Sean, right here?
Yep, is that
The
because of
sheet?
the expected increases to water and sewer?
We can revisit, well, we did discuss this at a previous meeting, and the reason I provided that for you is I wanted to take a look at the last several years. I went back to 2011. Between 2011 and 2015, I looked at what was reported on the recap sheet, and so I took the average, but the number I'm using on this sheet is a little more conservative. It is an increase over what we were looking at a couple weeks ago on this sheet. So for water, we reported between 2011 and 2015, I came up with an average of $404,680 in water receipts. And on the sewer side, it's an average of $346,999 in sewer revenues. So I decided to bump the sewer to 330. I was using 321,000. And on the water side, I was using 388,000. I bumped it to 390,000. So at the bottom of that page, on the left-hand side, the sewer, that's a projected deficit. On the water side, there would be a surplus. Not much, but it is enough to cover the deficit in sewer.
Which paper are you looking at?
This one right here,
Huh?
Page number.
Individual trees.
this sheet right here. You should
Yeah,
have
well,
that.
no,
Oh, you don't?
I added some, well,
This covers it. Because we combine the two.
I'm sorry, you should have received that.
right.
Here, I have some extra copies right here.
So we still have I guess, there's still a deficit of about 8 grand, right?
No, no.
Taken care of.
So
You got the sheet.
last week, we were looking at a potential deficit of 8 grand. What I did was look at the numbers reported on the recap between 2011 and 2015.
Okay.
For water, it averages out to $404,680 in revenues.
Yeah,
For water, I bumped up the estimated revenues of $388,000 to $390,000. It's still a little conservative, you know, but the average, according to the recap reports, the average is $404,000.
okay.
On the sewer side, the average is $346,999. Originally, I was using $321,000 in estimated revenues for sewer. I increased it to $330,000. It still gives us a deficit of $37,187
For sewer.
for sewer.
But recall, we
On
combine
the
the
water,
two.
though, there is a surplus, which would take care of that potential deficit.
Well,
Again, that's just covering the direct costs and indirect costs. That's not, that's not covering capital or any interest or principal debt.
and last year, we had the DPW director's salary. or
Yes.
Part
That's
of it
correct.
in there, that's been
That's
taken out.
excluded.
So we're getting like farther away from, which is okay, but we're moving away from an actual enterprise.
Never been close.
No, and
Right.
we're
It's
getting
not
farther
operating
away.
as an enterprise,
Yeah.
a full enterprise fund.
So-
Which has to do, for townspeople's edification, that it has nothing to do with us not trying to implement the enterprise funds. It has to do with size and
Correct,
the
correct,
usage and the
usage.
number of people on it. I mean, that's the reasoning that it's never really gotten to the full-blown scope of larger cities.
Well, so there's a, I guess a relatively small number of folks on it, but, and since these numbers now take out the DPW director's salary, again, the town is every year steadily increasing our subsidizing of the sewer system, particularly those folks who are on septics. My concern continues to be that, they're subsidizing it. At the end of the day, when their septic goes, no one's subsidizing them. I get it when it comes to town-owned properties. Of course, we want to make sure we have the sewer for them, but the rates, need to cover the cost. I mean, I think that was, or at least, and I shouldn't even say that. They don't need to fully cover the cost, but we have, as a town, have to decide how much we're comfortable with sort of capping our subsidizing of it. And I think that needs to be a broader discussion. I don't know what, committee, I guess that would go before the Board of Selectmen. I don't know what committee would bring it, but, I think we say, 15, 20%, whatever it might be, because of our schools, our fire department, and because we want to attract people to town. It's good to have a sewer system. So again, I think we need to have that larger conversation.
One of the things we did propose here, we talked about it in the articles, is essentially a look at a modernization and maintenance and modernization of a master plan for our sewer system. It's not going to be a short-term effort. It's got to be a long-term, laying out expansion of the system. So simply you get your costs spread over a larger base. You've got half the base now, you're looking at the other half. It's a significant upfront investment to get there. So there's nothing going to happen overnight. This is really long-term, taking baby steps. Yes, sir.
And so what you really have here is a pretty bare bone budget.
Yes.
It is.
And my concern, to kind of piggyback on Sean, is I think you need to address the 37,000 surplus by doing something with rates, and I know everybody.
The deficit.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Deficit, by doing something more with rates, and I know townspeople hate to hear that, and I apologize for saying that, but
No,
we've taken all the loans out of it, all the interest, all the capital, we've taken the DPW director's salary out of them. I mean, it's really.
Just to be clear, that wasn't the whole salary.
No, it was a portion.
of the
It was a portion. A portion came from water, a portion came from sewer, and a portion comes from the town. Now it all comes from the town, which I can live with all of that, but
Which it was originally.
it was originally, right. It would be nice if the select board would address that somehow, because otherwise it's gonna continue to grow. In my, and I know it's great, we combined the water and sewer so that we wouldn't have problems. We could always transfer some, but I still would like to see that closer to zero. So I think you have to address rates.
We intend to, yes. We told you that.
Yes.
Yeah, at least water has a deficit, a surplus,
Along with the sewer increase.
right.
But why would there be is there a water increase? Why would there be a
Yes.
water increase if the water's not only covering itself, but
It's not,
covering
it's,
itself?
it's truly not covering itself for an enterprise.
Oh, well, because,
We're covering-
because we took everything out because.
We're
of
covering
something,
these,
yeah.
what, $100,000 here of indirect expenses.
There are a few
And
loans.
salaries, so 300,
Right,
600, what, $700,000 worth, right?
yeah.
That's not against the town, it's against the enterprise.
Well, then it'll be interesting to see the proposed rates, because I mean, so if we're gonna look at sewer actually covering more of its costs by increasing the rates, is that gonna be on par with, or, I mean, water, is that gonna be on par with sewer? Because they've got the deficit, so they're already working from a deeper hole. And if we're saying, well, and you gotta cover more of your indirect expenses, then I would think they'd be looking at more of a, of a substantial, sort of increase. So it'd be interesting to see the numbers then if we're talking about water potentially going up as well, especially after, more than a year of subsidizing the sewer.
Well, water and sewer have been subsidized since we entered the enterprise.
Yeah. so
And there,
Years of subsidizing the sewer.
there are some additional costs on the water side of it. If I get the West Street water main principal and interest
Yes,
and, water transmission design, huh?
Yeah, you have that whole new project.
Right, but that is being covered
By
with
water revenue.
water revenue, as opposed on the sewer side, it's the budget, that's it.
And when considering increases to water customers, I think we also need to think, since we've been covering the deficit, and it was an enterprise, especially a separate enterprise previously, all of those surpluses could have been built up to cover a lot of additional expenses. So again, I think water, probably has been covering itself, or closer to covering it, significantly closer than sewer to covering itself, and maybe would be there had it had years of actually keeping its surpluses, potentially. So I think we should look carefully at the water increase.
yeah, water has essentially paid for itself in terms of operating expenses, period. Not debt, not capital, not,
Nothing's covering
no
that,
big
yeah.
no big tickets. It's been getting by.
As is sewer, yeah. On that ground, they're all even, I mean.
Go ahead, Mary.
Shall we walk through the budget?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Line 3, there is a slight increase for the administrative staff to increase an additional 10 hours and provide support to the accountant. Treasurer's staff, there is an increase to fund the position for the assistant treasurer for 35 hours. And that was offset by reducing the tax title budget. Just one correction, I need to update the spreadsheet. Oliver Smith will elector line 23. The town clerk requested $25, and I had missed that. That will change that number on the front.
How dare she?
Right.
Denied.
So can we talk about the
Take it from the
treasurer?
DPW.
Yes, absolutely.
Since the finance, so Fran and I had the opportunity, we sat with Jeff and Marlene the other day, just to kind of preliminary go through it. Fran was, anyway, and Laura Lee sat in with us, and so we had a discussion. Originally, the finance committee had said we were okay with, I believe, funding the position up to 24 hours. And so, Laura Lee, pointed out, and others pointed out that that was simply not enough hours to get the job done and to do it right. And so, I certainly think it's something we can talk about, but for me, the bottom line, I came out of that meeting as frustrated as I could be about, I was frustrated because, we're all of a sudden going from someone that we're paying 16 hours and now we're gonna be paying 35, but financially, I don't see any other way to do it. What she does, this is Edwina's job, is critical, does all the payroll, plus all the other stuff. We've had some issues financially in the past couple of years, and so I would have a concern of funding that position any less than that, just because we can't afford to have any more mistakes and go back to special town meetings and try to fix things, so. But certainly I wanted to throw that out to the rest of the finance committee that was there.
Just want to add that additional work to the treasurer's office for the assistant treasurer is the lunch bucks program.
Right.
You had pointed out the other day.
Right.
Yeah, retirement's something else as well, where she used to just be able to send a check. Now she actually needs to do all the disbursements, figure everything out, and send out an entire electronic file to tell the retirement boards, how everything's broken down amongst the teachers, how that with Oprah as well. So, I think it's coming from probably they need to maybe scale down or whatever on their man hours. So it's an additional task now that the town needs to do. It's not just, we don't simply write a check anymore and send it. We have to, put together, a whole electronic digital data file, and she needs to track all of that now, and that needs to get sent. But there's other tasks as well. It's just, as technology evolves, there's more duties and responsibilities that fall into that position.
The other situation we have in the collector's office is that we had people working more hours than were being paid for. Because of a situation involving an employee who was retired and was limited in terms of how many hours she could work on the record. And but she was working above and beyond what she was being paid for. And so now we're in a situation where that person is retiring for a second time or leaving, and we have to cover those hours.
And we can't find anyone else that's willing to work for free.
Right, and we have to pay for those hours.
Right.
That was, a big part of the situation that we find ourselves in.
Right.
And that office is the front door to the revenue coming into the town, and it's important that we have that office well-staffed and able to do the work that's required.
Was any thought or consideration or investigation done into, well, I have no doubt there's a need for a second person, but can some of the duties be removed. Have we looked into going to a payroll service for the
Yes, we
town?
did. Yeah, we did.
And,
About $18,000 a year.
yeah,
And they couldn't even tell us that they could eliminate save us 1 day a week of time. They said they would probably save us less than 8 hours.
How many companies did you talk to?
We spoke to one. When the price came in, they're all relatively in the same ballpark. You know, we don't have a lot of extra hours a week, and, you know, we spent, you know, hours with the first company, so I think, you know, if it came in where it was something that made sense, at that point, we would have contacted several more and have been able to get, you know, the best price to come forward, but, you know, with what it is that they were offering, you know, it wasn't enough to take away enough of the workload of our payroll, our in-house payroll.
so it was gonna be about 8 hours, they had said it would be
Less
approximately.
than 8 hours a week they could save us, and it was just under 18,000 a year.
And the payroll service does the easy job, they cut the checks, the front-end loading is still
Yeah,
done
here.
in the records, the treasurer's office.
Well, that's gonna be part of my question, and I don't know how deep we may have dug, at least for this time, but maybe it's something to look into. But I would think that other work groups within the town would submit their own information and not have to come to town hall for that.
Right.
I would think the schools could submit, if we had that type of a service, or even to get it here for that matter, online through a system, and that wouldn't have to be done by somebody sitting in Laura Lee's office.
And actually, the schools could, yeah, I mean, the whole town could do something, like a lot of companies are doing now, where everyone moves to electronic timesheets, and so then you don't even have that input. You know, just someone looks over all of the numbers, while their supervisors approve the electronic timesheet before it's dumped into the system, and then ADP or whatever the service is uses that information to cut the checks versus actually having someone physically putting them in.
I certainly wasn't part of the conversation, but
No, we did.
I think maybe it needs, as I said, not maybe for this budget cycle, but certainly something I think we should look into. I mean, it's 2016. That's what every company, large company, and probably most towns do something similar to that.
Yeah, and we did talk
you know.
about computerizing data processing,
Yeah.
and there's a cost associated with
Sure.
that as well, and so I think in our discussion, we saw it as a goal, someplace we want to go
Okay.
for the future, and hopefully we would realize some sort of savings after we made the initial investment and got
Sure.
everything set up and people trained.
Good, yeah. I guess my point being, I think it's something worth looking into, and maybe we need to continue to look into it for down the road, and see if it makes sense. It might not make sense, but, you know, if we don't get enough information about it back, we're never gonna know if we're making a decision based on apples and apples or on apples and oranges, that's all.
And in my conversation with the superintendent, he indicated that the school department was going to be starting on this in the next year, and there was a 2-year phase-in. So there's a move in that direction.
Okay.
Well, my overall concern is related to I mean, I got serious concerns about it. It's just because we've been building our financial team, so I wonder if there's opportunities for collaboration there. We've increased the number of hours we have for an accountant, so we've been investing in this. And right now, we're talking about investing when we don't have the funds to do it, and increasing someone's hours, so I imagine there's increased healthcare costs. I know previously the person qualified for healthcare anyway, but imagine there's gonna be some increased healthcare costs. And this is a position that'll likely continue and continue and continue, so it's a long-term commitment, really, essentially a full-time position. And I just don't know that that's where we are this year. You know, I think this year we've gotta come up with some creative solutions, and if anything, maybe give some extra hours to make up for some of the extra work that Reno was doing. But to create another full-time position right now, it seems short-sighted to me, since we're struggling to meet, you know, to just cover our budget year after year. We're using free cash, we're using stabilization. So another full-time position's a lot to ask.
Well, I mean, I agree that in some ways it's a lot to ask, but I mean, I think you have to look at it from a perspective, we're not starting from even. We're
Right.
starting from a complete disaster,
Right.
essentially. You started from a place where where we didn't know what the fund balances were. We were spending money we didn't have. I mean, not to sugarcoat it, but it was not a good situation that we were in. So it's one thing if you're starting from everything's working at a minimal level to making it better. We're starting from it ain't working to, we got to get to a point where it works better than that. I mean, to me, that's really the most important thing we can do this year is to be able to, when you put the budget together, to be able to have confidence that the numbers that are in there that you're getting to do it are accurate.
Sure, I mean, but with the problem.
Put our financial house in order, that's what we
Absolutely.
need to do.
Right.
And that's fine, I mean, but I often think that when folks feel like there's a problem, we think that, putting money towards it, increasing the accountant's hours, increasing the treasurer's is gonna solve the problem, and I don't know that it will. I mean, I think, maybe it's a systems thing. I think it's, probably larger than just the people who are in the offices. But again, I think you're right, Sean, in that we're not starting at even, so maybe this is a short-term fix, but we're actually putting into place something that's more long-term. Maybe, I don't know if you've looked at, is there a way to bring in someone on a temporary basis, a year commitment? That's my concern, is that this position's gonna be on the books, then it's always gonna be on the books, and we're not even covering our budget right now. We're
And
struggling.
Sean, we're not adding a lot of hours, as I said. We're paying for hours that have been worked previously.
Right.
So
We're adding money.
We're not adding a lot of hours to that office. We're paying for the hours that have been worked that we're no longer getting for nothing.
Right.
And again, not that I really question that, again, I think the problem, I think it's a systems problem that when that came up, and I'm new, so of course I might be surprised, but it seemed like everyone was surprised. And so, I think more information needs to be presented about that. How many hours per week? And is this a seasonal thing? Do we bring someone in for part of the year? Do we move to a position like we were talking, a general clerk that has accounting experience that helps out across the board at town hall? I mean, I think these things just need to, be done in the context of a larger plan to really fix, our financial house. And maybe that's the case, but I'm not seeing the plan, the long-term 5-year plan. These are the steps that we're taking to get the financial house in order. And part of that step is increasing the treasurer's hours along with the accountant. This is how they're gonna work as a team. And this is what the benchmarks that we're looking for over the next few years.
And Sean, if you start talking about part-time, you're talking about people coming in as subs. You're talking about an applicant pool that is not very highly qualified, and there's a lot of transitioning and training and stuff that goes into those people to do the work on a reduced hour basis. The applicants that you get when it's a full-time job, which is what we're proposing here, are just so far and away more qualified, highly qualified, capable of doing the job that needs to be done, that it's well worth the investment.
I think the other piece is that we have some unique things that are happening here that aren't necessarily applicable to everybody who does accounting in the general world or has some accounting background. I think Eric would attest to that. If you're working in the private sector and you're coming to town 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week to do something, not every task, but there are certain tasks that are very specific to what we're doing as a municipal government that people aren't doing in the broader world because of the way accounting and municipal governments works. So you're gonna have to teach them how to do that essentially in some way. I think that is an issue to consider, that the applicant pool of people with some finance experience might be large, but the applicant pool of people with finance experience in a town is a lot smaller than that.
The financial management areas are the critical pieces we need to clean up. We're at a stage of trying to get to stability. We've got a new treasurer. We have a new accountant. We've got a new collector. I mean, it's going to take a little time for that team to build out. And now we're going to have a new assistant treasurer as well. So goal one to me is to stabilize the situation And then there are always opportunities to look at how we're doing business and can it be done differently and more effectively. But right now, we're in a rebuild situation.
Right, there are certain things that we know we have to do
Right.
differently than the way we were doing it before. There's no question about that.
Right.
So, I mean, we have to address those things, I guess, at some level, so.
Right.
I mean, I think we're looking at a big salary position here, a full-time position. I get the need. I'd like to see this team, you know, spend some time working on this and see where we're at with some maybe additional help, part-time help. But, you know, we're looking at a $45,000 a year salaried position, fairly close to what.
Sean, included in that number, excuse me for interrupting, is $5,000 for consulting.
Okay, so.
Short term.
Short term, right. That would go away next year.
That'll go away.
We have someone leaving
Go
next month, or May rather.
That
And now will this
27
person be hired with any
includes
sort
the
of
5,000
agreement that
that's already
after
in
a
that
year,
budget.
they will be
Not
able
going up
to
45, it's
negotiate
going
a
up
pay
Correct,
raise?
yes,
And
you're right,
40,000
yes.
is a tight
Yeah.
pay for the type
Yeah.
of professional that we're talking about here. Is there any indication in those conversations that after a year, they'll be eligible for any additional?
The treasurer is independently elected, she'll be hiring.
So I'm asking.
As far as, no. I
No?
mean, you know, it would just be your standard,
COLA.
you know, cost of living increases.
So this is the salary of the position, the 40,000. You know, because we also need to know, like we've talked about in the past, that we've got to remember next year to pull that 5,000, you know, out of that line and out of the budget, rather than it just, you know, continue in there and be used for another consultant.
Well, in this case, just because it's tied to a one specific job,
It might be, it'll be.
either you
easier to
won't
notice.
spend it or you won't, you know.
Right,
I have it
Yeah.
separate within my budget, it just.
right.
It's not
the
just in
form
a
I
general,
submitted was,
I think that's a bigger concern when you're talking about like a general expense budget where I spend $5,000 on a new computer this year and then I spend $5,000 on a new copier next, you know, and
Yeah,
it keeps
right.
rolling along. I mean, you can't really, you have to raise the person's salary, you'd have to actually act on that.
I think the last thing on this particular budget line before we move on also is that that amount for next year that's mentioned already includes $27,000 that's being expended today.
Yeah.
So the difference, I just want to make sure people don't think we're adding a $45,000 position. What we're doing
we
is,
are.
we're increasing a 27, right.
We're increasing a
an existing
position,
position.
but we are creating a full-time position.
But even at the 27, they were eligible for benefits.
For benefits.
Right.
Okay, good. Next.
Okay. The next page, page 3, unless anybody has any other questions on that previous page. The police department, that represents a 1.5% cost of living, in addition to a $2 an hour increase
Missed that.
for the lieutenant and a $2 an hour increase for the sergeant.
Can we just go back and just answer the question of why we moved public building and maintenance to DPW?
I'm sorry?
Why public building and maintenance got moved?
From
To
where?
facilities, it was moved to
Always
facilities.
was. We just combined two lines.
No, I know, but when you look at the budget year to year, every time you combine lines and move lines and change lines, then it makes it harder and harder to compare the budget
Well,
year to year. That's-
well, it shows it here, I believe, it,
Yeah,
moved to
sure,
deep-
it moved, yes.
and it shows it netted out.
It was moved to line 48, facilities and management maintenance. Now it's just town hall maintenance. and
Town hall
facilities.
maintenance and.
Frankly, I
facility.
thought it was Finance Committee was
No, it's
suggesting we do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was,
Okay. I'm not objecting to it, I just wanted to know
Okay.
where it is, and I wanna be able to keep track of
Yeah.
it.
we had
When
a
you look
meeting
line
early
to
on, I
line,
thought
year
that's
to
what
year,
everybody agreed
It
to.
gets confusing
Yeah.
if you change those from 2 to 4.
Right.
Well, we agreed to do what you,
No, that's fine, no, I
Thought-
just, yep.
told you before.
okay.
I had no particular interest in one way or another, yeah, other than keeping track of it.
Bad staples.
So we're at the police department. So the selectmen voted to,
Selectmen are recommending a $2 an hour increase. 2 and 2,
and we had 1.50 cents, right.
right.
So, and
And I know Selectman
Sorry, Don.
Gahn would like to speak to that as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
The problem is that the information was presented to us by Mike, who's the current lieutenant. Average-wise, even with that increase, we don't reach the average-wise that is reflected in financial statements for surrounding towns, many of which are smaller communities than us. And yes, quite frankly, you could say, you know, it's just not going to happen. But what do? Are we trading off experience? Whoever comes in is going to start from scratch. And it's my sense, at this point anyway, that the amount is not exorbitant. When I negotiated with them, because that was part of my assignment as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I indicated to them that the most I would propose would be $4. That is over and above what they're currently making, spread out over 2 years. Now, what does that do? That brings them to the medium figure. They're currently at $19.50 an hour, and currently surrounding towns are paying 23 and change.
Bless you.
Bless you. So I think it is justified. We're talking about individuals who have been around for a considerable period of time, are well versed and well known in the community. And I would hate for us to see us having to start over. That being said, I also appreciate, believe it or not, the financial concerns that we have. But you got to bend sometimes. And my sense is that this is one of the areas where we really need to bend, especially since it's spread out and brings them to an equitable situation in 2 more years, but during that time frame, they're still behind. Same responsibilities, and so on and so forth. So
Pat, this is a $4 increase over 2 years?
over 2 years. The revised budget should reflect $2 per individual, per lieutenant, per sergeant.
One each.
Pardon me?
There's only one each.
Full-time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, but it's, but
not
each
all.
position is accountable for a $2 increase this year, and then $2 increase next year. That all has to be, we're not doing next year's budget. But keep in mind that at this point in time, there's still $2 below the average for much smaller communities as well. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet to keep good people. There are other times, no pun intended, excuse me. But the reality is that you do what you need to do so that we can retain individuals without getting carried away with this whole business. And when we're talking about individuals who currently are $4 behind on the average per position, that's something I think we might be able to stretch our.
Do we know how long the lieutenant has been here and the sergeant has been here?
I can't say exactly, but I'm pretty sure Mike has been here about 10 years, and I'm not sure about Clint. But please don't quote me on that. We could find it out eventually, quickly, but I don't have the financial figures in front of me, payroll and stuff.
So when we as a finance committee talk about things like this, townspeople should understand that it's nothing personal. We're looking at this as a budget. And what can we, we've got a pot of money coming in, a pot of money going out. And so when we talk about these things, and so it's hard to talk about salaries because then people perceive it as personal. And, as a finance committee, this is not personal. This is one of the tightest budgets that we've run into in years. And so we also recognize the fact, as Pat so eloquently pointed out, that we do need to take care of some of the some of our employees. That's why we recommended, you know, that the Council of Aging Director, she was recommended a $4 increase, and we recommended a $2 increase, which is half of the recommend, and we thought, when we looked at the police budget, that what Chief Osley was recommending was a $2 increase, and so we thought to keep it in par with what we had decided to do with COA, that we would offer, again, half the increase. So that was, again, nothing personal, but we did want to, we do see the value of these people that have worked for the town for a long time. Someone like Jane that's worked for a long time, and certainly the lieutenant and sergeant that have been here a while, and we appreciate that. So it does get, these things do get difficult. We did not talk about giving them another $2 next year too, but that will be for next year's budget
And that's,
to talk about.
excuse me, Darrell, but that is exactly what I pointed out. We're not talking next year's budget. Overall, in my discussions, I was talking $4 over a 2-year period, with the understanding that has to be renegotiated. We don't negotiate budgets in advance. We plan within our own structure. And so hopefully we'll be able to, you know, apply the funds and not become so way out of whack that it's absolutely ridiculous. And I just can't see any of us here, whether it's yourselves on the Finance Committee or ourselves on the Board of Selectmen, wants to go down that road.
Okay. Well, we will certainly, when we're meeting next week, we'll talk about, we'll talk about this.
Can we, it's not highlighted in yellow, but I was actually, maybe can wait for Fran, but I'd like to talk about the school budget.
Increased 117,000.
Before we go to school, can I just ask a question about the rest of public safety?
Yeah.
Or specifically the ambulance revenue piece. Do we have, does it show, Marlene, what came out of ambulance revenue in a prior year?
For this fiscal year you're talking
No, I
about?
mean, I see it, yes,
For this fiscal
Yeah.
year?
Just because it's hard to know what's happening without knowing what that $66,000 represents. Does it represent more or less?
Yeah. I can get that. I have that in my office.
Okay, just to know that maybe that's all new, maybe it's half, you know, I don't know. But just 'cause it's a significant piece of that revenue.
Sure.
Yeah, you don't need
Oh,
that.
oh.
Because these guys are going to meet next, yeah.
Just so we can have it.
All right, so I will get that and
Yeah.
send that out to you.
I don't remember. So, we pay emergency fire department and emergency management. Okay, never mind. Okay. Move on.
All you gotta do is look at the previous budgets. I don't mean you, I mean.
Good, Darrell?
Yeah, let's go to school.
All right, so, like most of the town departments that have submitted their budgets, they were required, you know, the end of 2015 or the beginning of 2016. So when the school department presented their budget in January, you know, that was a budget requirement by the superintendent, the school committee, and the budget subcommittee. Due to some changes in special education, changes with a new bus contract, partial negotiation with the teacher's contract, which would be the first year of that new contract would be next year, and then years 2 and 3 down the road, which we haven't really gotten to yet. We're pretty comfortable that we can relook at this budget and probably look at lowering it $40,000 to $50,000. You haven't sat down and dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's. But due to the things I just mentioned, having changed since January through the middle of March, it looks like our request would be approximately $50,000 less. Yay? No jumping up and down or clapping or anything? Geez.
It is good news.
That is good.
We still have to finalize, the budget, but since we're here tonight, I obviously wanted to give you that bit of good news and give you, a final number will be coming in the next couple of weeks, but
Okay.
that's where it stands right now.
That would be great.
I don't
Thank you,
know, Fran or Mike Poshik's on the subcommittee, the budget subcommittee, and I don't know if Fran had talked to the superintendent. I don't know if there's anything else to add, but that's.
I would just say I had several conversations with John as the liaison from the Finance Committee, and he was willing to bring the draft budget that you have at this point to the school committee budget subcommittee at their Thursday night meeting to review with them the kinds of possible adjustments that you just outlined in your comments.
And we have a full school committee meeting Monday night.
The 4th of April.
Yep. So I'm sure this will be a topic of conversation, because we want to get that wrapped up on our end before we make the final presentation to the Selectmen and the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank the superintendent, don't thank me. Yes. Number man.
Thank you to all of you.
Yeah.
We need to drop our budget on the table faster.
Well, it's, quite honestly, the good news is that the changes were there and the savings were there, and, right, we're all in this together, so it wasn't like we're not
No, I
gonna.
appreciate it.
Yeah, we're not gonna hang on to money that we don't have an expense allocated for, whether, sped students or contracts, so it's the right thing to do, and everyone on the school committee and everyone in the administration agrees, so right now, that's where it stands, $50,000 less, roughly.
That will make a difference.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that, really. It's on the summary. It's in the back.
It's what?
The revenue's in the back.
For 16, oh, you're right, yes. The 60,876. Council on Aging, at the bottom of that page, we already addressed that increase. That's for the director. On the next page, the library,
Well, we gave drivers and the assistant the 1.5.
Yes.
all employees are
everybody got
receiving a
Okay.
1.5 increase.
Okay.
Right. The library's budget represents an increase in additional hours that the library will be open. It's approximately $56, an additional $56 a week.
In addition, if we want to continue to get our library grant, we have to.
At least have last year's amount in there.
Right.
It's like snow and ice.
We have to at least have last year's amount, or we have to increase it by 2.5%.
I thought it was equal.
I think we might have to increase.
No, it's got to be increased every year.
It does have to be
In
increased,
order to
but
get that
your
grant,
state library.
Yeah.
state grant. Yeah,
Well, are we okay?
They should be.
yeah, they
Yeah,
increased
okay,
it
right,
from
well,
38
okay.
to 40 on the expense.
Yeah. It increased 4 hours there. Okay.
are you missing something, Paul?
Yeah, that's right.
Is there an extra budget at all there? There's some extra ones.
Your budget's a lot cheaper.
Get it on page 4.
Recreation, we had a discussion on Friday, and I'm considering reducing the expense. The revolving fund, recreation revolving fund is obviously self-supporting. their operations. But I need to still reach out to the Recreation Committee and talk to them about that. So I'll get back to you.
But just so we're clear for the people at home, you know, it's not to cut services or.
Oh,
or
no,
cut-
no,
it-
not at
it's-
all.
It's, there's another budget that has
Right,
revenues
the
in it,
revolving
so-
fund, yes.
So
And
that's
that's
why
doing
this,
well.
right, town budget is looking to be reduced, so.
So, and as we've gone through the budget, also highlighted is funds that are coming from water revenue and sewer revenue. Your fixed costs at the bottom of page 4, a portion of those monies are funded from water revenue and sewer revenue. And on the next page, we are funding the principal amount for the grit conveyor of $11,000 from free cash. Otherwise, the rest of your principal and interest is funded from taxation. Looking down at the water department and the debt.
Is that to pay that off?
Is that to
The
pay off?
principal for the quick conveyor?
The grit conveyor debt, I don't think that pays that off,
No,
no.
we just have $11,200 of free cash, and this was just a fit for it.
Yeah,
To pay it off, right?
no, not to pay it off.
No, yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
It's not paying it off.
It just happens to be.
We had the 11,000 available.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
On this sheet of water and sewer that you passed out, you had sewer, and maybe I'm just wrong, but revenues of 330, and on line 93 or whatever, you've got sewer revenue of 321. What am I misreading something?
That's the budget operations. If you look down in the center of this page you're looking at, direct budget is $321,175.
That's
The
just the
330 is
budget.
estimated revenues.
That's not the, okay, thank you.
Right. And then the indirect costs are $46,012 on the sewer side.
Right.
So yeah, at the top of that page, that's estimated revenues.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Moving to page 6. Do you have page 6? A Phil Paul. Okay. That lists all the warrant, annual town meeting warrant articles that require funding. So you have the Chapter 90, which, you know, comes from available funds. The town hall renovation, that's a debt exclusion. That would be a borrowing. We have a anticipated water budget deficit, and that would come from stabilization.
So that's gonna be a tough sell. Just
Yeah,
to
we had
raise
3
that, I
water
understand
breaks.
why you're using it out of that,
Yeah.
but we, as was witnessed here earlier, that,
Right.
you know, I just think we need to be fully prepared if we're gonna go forward, we're taking it out of stabilization. Because already, we're gonna go to town floor this year and not be able to put back what we took out in December, for
Right.
good reason.
Right.
And we can say that next year we'll try to put that money back, but
Well, we said that.
said that last time.
We know that there will be an increase in free cash at the
But-
later this year.
Right, but I just,
We could know expenses are gonna come up too, though. I mean, we know, just like this year, unexpected things are gonna happen, and so,
right,
Well, you could technically probably do it this year if you wanted to.
what do you mean?
Well, that free cash will become available before
oh yeah, you could do it
At the end of the year.
meeting next year, for
You-
sure. So
Yeah.
you could do it, I mean, it'll probably be available within 4 or 5 months.
September.
So you could theoretically have a fall town meeting and put whatever you have available in free cash on that day back into stabilization.
back into stabilization, so.
If you wanted to.
Daryl, were you thinking that,
I have
I mean,
no-
I hear what you're saying, but this, we gotta get 60,000 somewhere, right?
I
So-
have no idea where the money's coming from.
Right.
Maybe we we steal from Wells Fargo, I don't.
Yeah.
But I'm just pointing,
Right.
pointing out
I think-
that will be a tougher sell on
I
town
understand.
floor.
I know
And-
part of our conversation when we had it, something that I talked about, I don't want to speak for Jeff or Pat, but it was because it was a sort of a one-time event, right? You know, to fix something, did you want to borrow for that? Did you want to,
I think we should-
you know, it was kind of like, do
we
you
should
have
consider-
it?
I think we should consider doing a one-time debt exclusion for it.
I mean, money's cheap, but,
I mean, just.
but, you know, that's why we're having this, right?
I do, I think we should consider, we should have a conversation about that versus taking it out of stabilization at this point.
We will have, what, taken 60% of stabilization over the course of this 1 year, really, over the course of the last 6-7 months.
What's that called? It's not a debt exclusion, I have the wrong term. It's when you do it for one time.
Better?
You're not borrowing, so it's not a debt
Right.
exclusion, it's a.
Not an override, because that stays, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is essentially.
Right.
has
It is still an
Right.
override,
You add on to the tax rate.
just
One
for
year.
1 year, and it goes
For a
away.
specific function, and then it goes away.
Right.
And it's not a borrowing, it's,
Yeah, I know, it escapes me. Laura Lee, can you think of it?
But it has to, that has to be
Earmarked one.
voted at town floor and at the ballot box, right?
Yes, that is correct.
But we're already
If we
going.
do that, I need to get that question to the town clerk by April 12th. So we need to have a discussion about that.
I think either of the options that Sean is probably more palatable than trying to take it out of stabilization.
You know, I just wanted to add that, you know, the water and sewer budgets are so tight that we're not even funding potential water breaks, which we should be. And if the money was available in retained earnings, we would be using that. That's what we should be doing.
Well,
Reason to keep a stabilization too, because I mean, we don't know what water breaks are gonna break next,
But,
you know?
but that's why we're saying take it out of stabilization.
Yeah, but we just.
So-
No, listen though, that's why
Right,
several
I mean,
months ago,
yeah.
when we took that 140 out of stabilization, I was opposed because I didn't truly think that was an emergency type situation. I think a water break might be.
Yeah.
But we just took 140, now we're, almost down to nothing. Really, we're talking, what, $110,000 left in stabilization after this? And, that's
Yeah,
hardly, we've already spent way more than that.
I'm with
this
you,
year.
but
Yeah, it's a capital outlay exclusion.
there you go. God for the internet.
Back to Google.
I mean, I think it's something to consider, given where you are with stabilization. If you had $500,000 in stabilization or something,
be a no-brainer,
yeah,
but
but,
It's a must-pay bill.
yeah.
but to get 2/3 vote might be tough.
Or we figure out a way to put it in the budget, I mean, you gotta budget for things, and so you make tough decisions, and you figure out how to get it in there. And luckily, we got the good news from the school department, so maybe this just puts us back where we were at the beginning of this meeting.
Right.
It
So,
does from a numbers perspective.
I think a one-time debt exclusion, what did you call it, a capital?
Capital outlay expenditure exclusion.
There we go. I think that's probably the way to do it.
It'll pass.
Well, especially because you have the elementary school off this year, right?
Derek, stabilization, do you recall, because you were actually adding funds that had been approved at the annual town meeting last year for that? Do you remember? I have that in my office. Do you remember what that was?
There was, I thought you had said that they put 30,000 in last year.
There was an article last year at town meeting, but that had not been posted to the stabilization yet for this fiscal year.
I don't remember.
I don't remember it.
I have to look back.
Yeah, I have that article with me. I'll go get that. I know I have it in my office.
Sean has it.
Sean does.
I could never find it.
Oh, is this the budget from last year? Under articles. Sewer.
We had one for public, oh no. I don't see it.
I don't see it on this. This is April 21 budget.
I feel like it might have been in an early version, but then we just didn't have it at the end. It does sound vaguely familiar.
Okay, so the $351,729 balance prior to the special town meeting was, that was prior to the special town meeting, less the $147,715, there's a balance of $204,014.
So we
But I
did,
still believe there was,
we had an Article 10 to
Right.
submit from free cash a sum of money to the town hall renovation
to
stabilization.
the town hall, okay.
That might have been
Yeah.
wound up being the 30,000.
That one I remember, the regular stabilization.
Yeah, I don't see one. There, actually, I remember there was a discussion at one point about putting in regular stabilization versus town hall stabilization, but I don't see anything else. The water connection, the school.
So that is the current figure, the 204.
204.
204, but I just like to, yeah, I mean, we can
This is all
certainly
community
use that.
preservation, community preservation.
Do you not think a debt exclusion for the $60,000 is worth it?
I don't.
I have a personal opinion.
That's what I'm asking.
My personal opinion is if we have the money, we should use it to pay that issue and still leave 147 or 140,000, knowing that in 4 or 5 months, the free cash is going to be certified. I don't know, I mean, that's me, and that's me as a taxpayer, you know, why put a debt exclusion on? Because 60,000 just seems like a low number, you know, like, go for something big if you're gonna do something like that.
And there's always
Yeah.
a possibility it might not pass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does free cash need? Is that 2/3 also? As,
No,
no,
simple
majority.
But to take in it, what about putting it into stabilization now?
2/3.
Two-thirds.
2/3 to go in.
Both free cash and stabilization are both very low numbers, just based on some of the issues we've been dealing with this year. I mean, I get not doing the debt exclusion, but that's only because we know that there's a decent chance we're gonna have to do it for some, something else. I mean, once we spend that 60, it's still likely we're gonna have to spend another 60 later in the year, and then we're gonna do the debt exclusion at a special town meeting.
If you need it.
So-
We know we need this.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know, what we know, what we don't know.
Well, we
right?
know the trend.
Right, no, you're, Sean, I agree. This is my personal opinion. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we have this bill in front of us and we have the money to cover it, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Right, versus, that's what, to me, Brian, that's what stabilization is all about. Those unexpected things that come up, so. But that's just my own personal opinion.
Well, I don't disagree. I think the problem we get into is, one, what's left in the account, because it is for unexpected things,
Yep.
which is why I believe we should have a strong account. And then two, how it got to be the low number that it is, and I think, for being used for, expenses that might not necessarily be an emergency.
What's the process for getting money back into this account?
2/3 vote
Two-thirds
at town
vote at
meeting.
town floor. I mean,
From free cash.
And having the money.
difficult part, the difficult part is having the money.
Right, so that's really what I mean,
and what we're talking about is next year, whether you do it in the fall or whenever you decide to do it, it's $200,000 that you're gonna take out of somewhere, that we're not gonna buy a new police car, we're not gonna buy a new whatever. You go through the list of things, vans, we're gonna take $200,000 out of our free cash, and we're gonna put it into stabilization. That's a pretty big commitment,
Yeah.
and it's always hard to do.
We were talking about that using a percentage, so you have, for example, free cash, and you have a percentage of it that goes directly back into stabilization.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward, the controller's office is working, controller treasurer's office is working on foreclosure redemption, and in the next couple.
Far more aggressively than in
Very
the past.
aggressively, and in the next 2 years, there will be money falling to free cash from
Right.
redemption, and a significant amount.
Yeah.
So monies from that could be devoted to stabilization.
Absolutely. And I'm not one that believes that stabilization needs to be at $1 million or whatever, but
Yeah.
I'd be happy if it got back to the 350 or whatever. I mean, that to me is a pretty decent number, but we just
Marlene, did you want
gotta
to
get it
share
back
your
there.
discussion with on the pilot as well?
Oh.
Another potential source?
Percentage of that sort of thing.
Right, when
Well-
I was going to identify that, when we looked at local receipts, that was another, well, I had said earlier, I was able to bump up, local receipts. We met with the Nexamp last week, and we're pretty much near the end of negotiating the agreement. And we asked for more than what they were offering, and they're agreeing to it.
Yeah.
So we were able to increase, add that to the pilot. So that's 23, there's already 40, there's also a payment we received from Northampton.
27,000 payment
That
in lieu of taxes?
27,000.
Yes.
Right.
27.5?
So 4,500.
Take out the 45 from Northampton or whatever that number is. It's 4,000 something.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
23.
They, originally, they were proposing a 2.4 megawatt facility. The proposal that I received yesterday from them, based on our discussion last week, they've reduced it to a 2.3.
Okay.
But they've increased the amount
They
that was on the table
the
before.
per megawatt cost.
Yeah.
So there's another potential flow for 20 years that you could,
Just gotta have a plan.
Exactly.
Yeah, but also though, again, of course, I mean, we're counting on that money coming just to maintain our budget, you're always hoping for more money, so that's just gonna fill the holes that already exist, cause the budget's gonna continue to grow up. And we have to keep in mind, we're increasing at 2.5% taxes, 2.5% every year, just to keep up. So I just think it would be wise to decide on what we need to maintain and stabilization for emergencies like the water break, and then when those emergencies happen, establish a plan to get that back, or have something set, like every year a percentage of free cash goes to that account, to at least it gets to this basic level, which I think, I don't love 350, I think 4, 5, I'd love 5. But, okay, 4, let's say 4. 350 actually doesn't sound like that much money to me, really. When you think about it, especially with what things cost a town.
You just haven't been farming long enough.
Yeah, I know. No, I've been farming
more
I've been
years.
farming too long.
I know.
It doesn't seem like much money, It goes quick,
he works for the state.
Yeah, no, I know.
Goes quick.
I agree with John. I mean, we just need to have a plan for how that money's going back. Got several options on the table that
Well,
we can
and
decide.
in fairness, at the special town meeting, we suggested that we were going to attempt to
Put
put
it
together a
back.
budget that puts it back. At that time, we assumed it would be closing to free cash. which it will be, it's just not happening now.
Not this
because of
year.
Issues with
Or
DOR
this fiscal
and
year.
us, and so, I mean, the money is not getting spent in some other way. It's still out there.
Right.
and It is going to come.
Right.
It's just not going to come in May.
Right.
So,
And there's actually nothing, again, if we know that it's going to end up in stabilization, great. But, you know, we know that lots of things are gonna come up between now and then, just like they did between our conversation then and now, which is my concern. But it's always gonna be a concern.
Shall we
Okay,
continue with the articles?
yep.
All right, so the next item is the sewer inflow infiltration compliance.
Six.
That is a requirement that we need to meet. That would, 40,000 would fund that from free cash. And we have the development of a sewer master plan, that is a borrowing for 135,000.
Is it just me, or is that a lot of money for a master plan?
No, it's what we paid for water. Right, the water
I
master
thought it was
plan?
gonna be more.
Yeah.
It was in the same ballpark. Isn't the answer just expand?
Well,
Get more users.
That's one
That's
part
what
of
we,
the answer.
that's what we need to do, absolutely.
So
well,
when
it's
you say
more
no
than
to
that. It's an
35,
assessment of your,
what phases?
it provides an assessment of your overall system.
Existing, yeah.
Projections on when you're going to need replace,
You know, there was two.
We
what
have
are-
one for
what-
economically, where to build out.
Well, in the non-compliance, I mean, those were two things that were identified, is to prepare a master plan for the sewer as well as the infiltration and inflow. So those were two things that were like highlighted, that this is
Well-
what the town needs to get to.
It's a maintenance and master plan too. They're looking for the long-term, you got your facility up here. How old is it now?
Over
30 years? I mean,
And I would think it would underlie economic development.
Yeah.
You know, you have to know where things are
Exactly.
going.
You have to overlay it onto zoning somehow, understanding what needs might be.
Yeah, it's just, and,
I know.
and I think it's good that we're doing it, we need to do it, but at the end of that rainbow, we've got more money to spend if we actually,
Not actually a pot of gold at the end of the
there
sewer
is
rainbow,
no
is that what you're-
pot of gold. Yeah,
I mean, it does help you with the grant submissions.
right. Well,
Yeah, to know what your needs are.
You know, you
That's right, I
invested that
mean-
money, and this is where we want to go with it, and this is what we have to do to get there, so.
I mean,
Where if you're
right.
just shooting from the hip saying, yeah, we're gonna build out Route 5, well, what's the economic effect, you know, how is that gonna help you up economically? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that CDAG grant we got however many years ago, we wouldn't even be over on Route 5 at all, so. I think that was 450,000, or I can't remember, it was a lot of money, but whatever.
The North Street Sewer Project, that's for the 500 feet, correct, Phil?
Yes.
Correct.
So that's 65,000, that's a borrowing. Water service repairs on Valley and South Street, 25,000 from free cash. The fire department turnout gear replacements, 20,000 from free cash. The community preservation, that's a fiscal year 16 adjustment of $100,750. And community preservation, revenues fiscal year 17, 165. Community preservation is recommending to fund the phase 1 of the renovations at the Smith Academy Park, $194,633. And then the $50,000 borrowing, the last item, is the difference between the total cost for phase 1 of the renovation of Smith Academy Park, and that would be a borrowing.
The difference that CPA is not paying?
Yes.
Correct, correct.
The expectation being we put the
It's a-
money up front, but then get the grant
Grant
to come back
reimbursement.
for that same amount.
Yes.
You gotta front the money.
That's what they told me.
And the fire department turnout gear is
20,
completely different from the article.
Yeah, they have a replacement of 3 suits, I think, in the operating budget.
different 20.
Right.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
They bought suits both in the operating and then a bulk buy.
The next page is our state and other charges.
So this 85,000 though comes from the 96. It's appropriated from the 96 that's on the first page.
Yes. Plus the 11,000 in the operating budget for the grit conveyor.
Yeah, and then we project 100,000 for free cash that needs to be certified?
No, it's already
110?
certified, but it's withheld.
And what's that amount?
109.
109.
Okay. Okay.
Which
So I mean,
will
we're
be-
using 100 in this year's budget, likely we'll use 100 in next year's budget, so it doesn't
Well,
seem like there's gonna be
yeah,
any
but
free
you're-
cash.
We only use it if it's there.
Right.
Right.
We only use.
Well, but, you know, I guess I'm still referencing stabilization.
Yeah, but really, that 109 is from
Free cash.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, right?
In your budget?
Right? I mean, yeah.
You shouldn't use it for operating, but, yeah, your operating budget.
Yeah, no,
You're not used to
I'm not
cash.
saying, I'm saying if in the conversation related to putting some money in stabilization, we
Mhm.
know that there's going to continue to be free cash expenses that total probably around $100,000 almost any year.
Sure.
I mean, there's always something, so I just don't see where any, magic stabilization money is realistically gonna come.
Well, this particular 109, Sean, in this year
Hopefully, I hope
is
so,
actually,
but-
this particular 109 that we're expecting is actually from 2 years ago.
Right.
So we would also get last year's,
So we'll
some,
also get last year, so that
correct.
gives us,
Yeah.
okay.
It's 109,000 we would have had this year if DOR were not holding on to it.
Right. But you're right as far as free cash and stabilization, but there's always something to spend it on. That's,
Well, there is always something to spend
You know,
on,
that's-
but that doesn't mean we always have to spend it. either.
Right.
I mean, we've basically always used it to purchase capital items for the most part.
One time.
So in some years, there may be years when you can't purchase any capital items.
Right.
That's if you
Right.
want to choose to do something else with it, that's just what you have to decide.
Yep, and I think we're getting close to one of those years.
We're in that year.
This is one of those years, yeah.
We've hardly
Not
bought
buying
anything
any
in capital.
items this year, except the grit conveyor.
Yeah.
No, that's the loan.
That's the
That's the
loan.
loan, so, yeah.
Yeah, I just we have a strong interest in keeping this sewer plant going, quite honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Opposed to polluting the
If it
river.
stops working, it,
Yeah, it just doesn't.
fines will be good.
All right, what else?
Are there any questions about the state and other charges? That 1,274, 298 is reflected on the front page.
Okay.
The following page is state receipts. Again, these numbers are based on the governor's budget.
They might be a little higher, but not by much.
And the next page are our local receipts.
Yeah.
We're still trying to be conservative. Any questions there?
I was back on the veteran services being cut when they're going up. That's all right, never mind. We gotta pay them.
State receipts, oh,
Right.
Gotta pay it anyway.
you're talking about what we pay out in veterans benefits, yeah, it's been an increase.
So what about it?
So we had a 30,000 snow and ice deficit this year?
Yes.
Estimated.
I'm sorry, did you flip over,
Better than 100.
Local receipts?
We had last
No, that's
year.
where I'm at.
Yeah, we got to that, but I'm just going back to
Oh,
snow and ice.
oh.
Yeah, that was the last one. So what was the budget for snow and ice
30?
for this year? Did it Oh, around 30? Okay.
But we always budget 30,000.
Yeah.
Don't we have to increase it a little every year,
I did.
Equal or above?
equal or above,
Yeah.
right?
This year it's 43,850.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're 102,000 less than last year in snow and ice.
Right.
And the last page
Or the funds?
reflects, right, yes, our funding sources, free cash, it's even 96,000 total. Community preservation revenues, and then the other available funds.
Lots of zeros over
What
there.
happened to ambulance surplus? Didn't we used to have an ambulance surplus?
Yeah.
We have the trust. But, well, cause here you got ambulance revenue and then ambulance surplus. And obviously surplus is zero.
We're not using any ambulance surplus. Do we have anything in ambulance surplus?
We have, an ambulance trust and then an ambulance account.
Wasn't Stephen doing some revisions with all of that? Straightening some things out?
Yes.
Yes, with the accountant.
Looking at the ambulance billing.
Yeah.
Looking at the ambulance billing getting that taken care of. That concludes the budget.
When do you guys wanna meet? When do you wanna meet next week?
Yeah, nice work, Marlene.
So we still have to whittle that number down on the front page. We need to get that to a negative number. Yes, it will. It will.
Let's not do Tuesday after.
That was still using $750,000 of school choice money in the budget.
Ag Day.
That's, our budget includes using $750,000 from school choice, just for the people at home. So, yeah.
Hey, Sarah, did you want to, Brian wanted to make that point, and I think everyone should hear it.
That the school department budget includes $750,000 roughly being used from the school choice account, from the revenues that the school department receives.
Which we very much appreciate.
Just, you'll.
And we appreciate how carefully the school handles that money. I know they
do a good job.
They do a very good job with that, so. So. Schedule. So Finance Committee, Sean and I were just whispering, so we're thinking that we'll meet, are you guys okay for Tuesday night?
Is that
okay for Tuesday night? We'll do 6:30, so give us a chance.
I won't be there, but still, go ahead.